Well, today we have a nice little, I think an enforced session would be the best way to put it, because after watching the news this morning, they're predicting our first snowfall of the year. Good chance we're going to, 40% we're going to get some snowflakes today. So what that means, pretty simple. We get a pot of coffee going and we'll get to the next step on this fuselage construction. Yeah, it looks like snow's coming, baby. Soup, hot soup, and snow. Now on the last tape we made up this rough pattern, which is a press fit. Now the next step on this is to figure out how we're going to make the assembly, because one of these is going to be attached to the wing, one is going to be attached to the fuselage. The bolts are going to go in this way. Now it presents a problem. We need to make a hard surface. When in the past, what's happened when I've used light ply, and we can still use that as an option, but one of the things is you have to put big aluminum washers on if you decide to use light ply. And I have my own press now to make my own aluminum washers. Choice 2 is we can laminate this out of plywood. We have a lot of choices here, and so what I want to do is do a little material comparison, because I have my pattern now, and I can compare a couple of the different ways of doing this. Now what we have to do, the next step here, I want to take the exact diameter of one of the blind nuts that we'll be using. I want to go with a little bit of clearance. In fact, that should be plenty, because we're going to make our own aluminum washers for this project. We have the tool. Dave Midgley sent us the tool for making washers, among other things, but I want to have, when I lay this out, I don't want to have these blind nuts that they're hitting the fuselage side, because it gets too difficult to get in there and tighten the bolts. Now we already have a, in fact I don't have it here, where is it? Something that comes in real handy. It's a real long Allen wrench, of which I think Paul Winter made this for us, but I'm not sure. But it comes in real handy for taking out the bolts. In and out in the course of the time we're going to make it. So the next thing is to lay out where we want to have the blind nuts, the washers, and the bolts. Now we have another issue that we have to deal with here. Normally in a plane where the wing is more in alignment with the motor, as we've dropped the wing, the torque, the arm that we're transferring torque is now much lower in the plane. Normally they're in a much closer alignment. So here we want to make sure I get the bolts as far into the corners as practical, so that this joint, this wing to fuse joint, we don't want to have a little tiny joint. I want to have a big heavy joint and take advantage of the fact that we have this very wide, narrow, short fuselage, which should be very good at dampening vibration. So what I tried to do, given all the dimensions, is leave 3/10 of an inch in the perimeter. And that allows that when we want to get the wrench in there, the wrench isn't all off in the corner. I allowed for the thickness of the blind nut in the back, and what will be the thickness of the washer on the other side. That'll give us a little clearance around. It'll just make taking the ship apart a little bit easier. Now I was originally going to try to make these parts out of a piece of light ply, but then the more I was thinking about it, the more I was thinking about that torque not being equal. The torque is down here, the wing is here. There's going to be a lot of action going on, at least for the front bulkheads. So what I did, and it also is going to allow me, if I want to at some future time, or if I have to notch this out, make a hole in it so the tank can slide further back. So that was the decision of choice. Now I need to lay out, and I need 4 of these. And the 4 of them need to be pretty much exactly the same, so I'm just going to lay them out, make sure everything is 90 degrees, and try to build all 4 of them at the same time, so they'll be as accurate and the same as possible. Now this is a good trick that we picked up from Les Demet. You lay out your parts on plywood, put an incline on them. Now whenever you're going to saw plywood, number one, a brand new blade, or a very sharp blade, not a blade, especially if you've ever cut any carbon fiber or aluminum. Those jigsaw blades just self-destruct, they're useless. But now, to get the saw to follow that cut nicely, And again, this is a trick that Les really impressed me with. If you put a score in there, no, I'm not trying to cut it, is just put a little, like the equivalent of a ditch. What happens, you get a nice straight cut. When you go to saw that, the saw tends to follow that cut. And in this case, we want to get all 4 of these out of this one corner of the wood. Yeah, that alignment of the wing and the motor, that's on a low wing with a relatively low wing plane, that changes. And I think this will be probably a couple of grams heavier, but in the long run, I think this is cheap insurance. And I'm always looking for things that are going to prolong the life of the model. It's just a killer when you lose a plane like the Typhoon before it's what you anticipate as its lifespan is over. Now we have a little ditch. And the saw blade should just follow that a lot easier than if we just were trying to follow a line. Good trick from Les Demet. It really makes putting a nice neat cut in it. Just makes it just a little bit easier. You stack the deck in your favor instead of fighting it every step of the way. Now the next step on these, I want to true them all up so they're all exactly the same. And to do that, I need the fuselage because I've made them a tiny bit oversized. So each one will be a press fit for its fuselage. There may be the thickness of a line difference in the two fuselages, I don't know, but I want to have a nice tight fit. Now just trimming these off. They're just a tiny bit oversized, and I'm taking the amount of the pen line off. What I'm looking for is an absolutely press fit. And it's still just a little tighter than it should be. I don't want it to spread. It just takes a few more swipes. You can see that line starting to disappear. And each one, of course, is going to be an individual fit. These fuses are probably within a thickness of a pen line of being the same. Oh, that's nice. That fits real nice now. Now we've got a good fit. Now the piece in the back is not as critical because we're dealing with a whole different set of, we have a gap here and we just need to get the top half to be that it's not an interference fit. So we want to make each individual piece is going to be for each fuselage. This will be the yellow, I'm referencing off of this fuselages, the yellow bulkhead. And now I want to marry up what's going to be the back bulkhead. The back bulkhead is going to fit on that plywood in the back. I don't need to worry too much up here, but again, I'll go through the same operation of getting the fit as accurate as I can. And I can mark with an ink marker up here, so now I'll know this will always be the top, and this will always be the one that matches the yellow fuselage. Now what I'm going to do is drill all 3 of these at the same time, and then the pattern I can use on the second set when I set those up for the fuselage. This is for the yellow set, and I'll just put some masking tape in between here just to hold this solid while I'm doing this so it won't shift around. Now one of the ways of ensuring that this is really going to be super accurate, I drill one hole in the corner. Now what I put one 440 bolt in the corner. That holds it, that I can't even twist this even a little bit now. Now to ensure even more accuracy, I have another 440 bolt. Now that's holding it even more solid than it would be without the bolts. Every time I drill a hole, I put the bolt in, of course, right up to the last bolt. So now with the bolts in there, I know I've got a pretty good alignment. Now I can take the tape off. This is going to be my bulkhead that the bolts are going to go in, and I need to open up the holes for blind nuts with a 135 drill. Now it's also a good idea, once I have the bolts out, take my pattern off. I know this is going to be the part that's going to go forward. And I also want to know which side is going to be, this is going to be the back. And just so I get, when I go to put this part in, now I can identify, if I drop these parts on the floor, I don't put them in, they go right back, and I'll put some yellow on this bulkhead so I know where that bulkhead's going to wind up. Now the back side will have to be drilled out. It's a 135 drill, so that the blind nut's sitting there. I know this is the back, that's where the blind nuts would reside. If I were to put them on the wrong side, or it's going to make for a problem. So this hopefully is going to give me a big giant upgrade, because I've got this piece and it's not going to be attached to the fuselage right now. This is going to go in a box. The other one will be the orange one, and I can keep track of them that way. Now there's a couple of things before I put these blind nuts in permanently. I want to take a bolt. I just want to make sure I've got, this should be a nice press fit. I want to take each one of these threads, put a drop of 3-in-1 oil or something on it, so when I CA these in place, no chance I get any CA wicking down into those threads. Boy, this is one trick worth its weight in gold. All you have to do before you put any CA on anything, CA, even epoxy, has a way of wicking its way right down in there. Now there's very little chance that's going to ruin the threads when we glue these in. Now what I'm doing, I'm taking aluminum 440 bolts, 2 copper washers, because that's going to give me 1 extra thread when I make up the aluminum washers. I want to go through. Now what this is going to allow me to do, and by the way, these bolts are available from Micro Fasteners. They're in all the AMA magazines. I got a little bit of oil on the threads. I just want to kiss nice and tight so it seats. And I want to make, so now I know I have these with double washers. It's going to allow me a little extra material when I cut these bolts. I can CA these in right now knowing that there's a little bit of oil on the threads and it shouldn't lock up. I want to trim the bolts, but I want to leave about a 1/64 of an inch extra on there. That's one of the reasons I use the double brass washer. I don't want them to be too short. Now the next thing is, I want to undercut this so that the part that's going to attach to the wing is just slightly the thickness of glue and paint, able to slide right in there. Now it's not critical again at the top, but when we put these parts in, I don't want to have an interference fit, because once it builds up with paint, then getting the wing in and out gets to be a problem. So it's easier just to take off, oh, maybe 0.010, a little bit thickness of a pen line off all sides. So it's always going to be that the part attached to the wing will just plug right in. The idea is just to take off the pen line. So the final result is the part is undercut just ever so slightly on both sides, so that the part that's going to be attached to the wing is not going to have any interference there. And we don't need it to rub up on those parts for structure or anything. The former itself will give plenty of structure. Okay, now we want to make sure when I tack this in place, I have it in with the correct side going forward. I have my little undercut piece showing on both sides, and that I have it in at 90 degrees. And what I'll do the first thing is just tack it ever so slightly and then recheck all the 90 degrees angles. And once it's tacked, of course, I want to check that I have 90 degrees on both sides, that I'm 90 degrees this way, and that I'm showing the right amount of relief on each one of those little corner pieces. Now the last thing, and I want to check this again, I've checked it already, but I want to make sure I've got just enough clearance around there, no interference, it's not hitting any glue seams or anything. Now this part, obviously with the yellow, will go into the box. This will remain with this fuselage set until it's time to install the wing. Now because we're building two ships at a time, next step is going to be just basically to repeat that whole thing. We'll do that off camera, that's going to be redundant. If we can get these two finished up in this session, great. We've got a real nice start on this. This is really, you know, what happens is, at least for me, once I start to see shapes, I can envision what the plane is going to start to look like when the blocks, the shells, all the little detailing is done. And it's already starting to keep me awake at night. This was a pretty good session. If I can finish this other part up off camera today, next time we come back to it, I will be really happy. And again, everything that happens, the second one always goes a lot faster than the first one. And that's always a good thing to keep in mind if you're, you know, looking to try to make up time, or you want to build two planes in one winter. Now, thanks to the magic of video, we've managed to condense about 3 hours of video into 30 seconds. But what's significant here is both of these are done now. These are really a match set, and as this is evolving, I'm getting more and more happy with the way this is coming out. Now, one of the next steps I got to figure out, and I wanted to think about this tonight. We're going for pizza tonight, and that'll give me a good chance to get my brain in gear. How I want to do the tank floor. Again, that's one of those tricky little things that on the Novanta we've changed it several times, we've moved it, and I want to get it right this time. I want to get it that no matter what tank Joe decides he wants to run or what tank I want to run, we can accommodate it in this nose section. I marked up the second one with the orange. It fits right in there beautifully. And we've got this, we have a matched pair. And this was, boy, on the day they said it was going to snow today, first off, all we got is rain, but we did get all this stuff done. And one of the things I wanted to think about tonight, what the hell's the header I'm looking for? There. One of the things I want to think about tonight, while I'm having pizza, while I'm just relaxing, I guess, more than anything else, I want to, now this is the modified case, but I want to allow for, because Joe is going to be using that little spacer, I assume, maybe or maybe not. Let's just see how thick this bolt is. Now we can use that. But what I wanted to do is, just in my mind, start to look at how this is going to lay out in terms of the tank floor. Now the only problem that we run into with all of this stuff, when you go to put a header on, if you eliminate this piece, you've got to machine away back at the case. On any Rojet, that is. And we've done that, but I don't think it's something that's a big deal breaker. It's just something that lets me get a little more room in for the tank. But in this case, I just want to have this roughed out. I'm just using this like a to get a rough idea of where that tank floor can be. And maybe by tomorrow I can figure out how I want to do this, what material I want to use. Several choices. Again, we're not taking it anywhere. We're just gonna. Oh, here's the bolts. Each one of these headers has a separate length bolt because I massaged these headers. These are Scott Dinger headers, by the way. And there's no way realistically we can use anything like a tuned pipe on this because the wing will be coming out the bottom of the body. So we really want to know, what we really want to know is, when this sits in there, again, I ought to put the rest of this stuff back since we're not going to be using it right now. But just remember, if you eliminate this little piece and do this, you got to shorten the bolts, or else the bolts walk their way in and you can damage the case. That's some good information from Rich Oliver. Now, what this is going to allow us to do, next work session, we can be figuring out, well, we know this tank's too long for this fuselage, but we know what the shim should be for this tank. And now we can look at this and we can start to look at where that tank shim can be. Now, we can't really, the tank floor, we can't really put the tank floor in a place where it interferes with the header or it doesn't let enough air get underneath it. So the problem here is, and I've got to get the ruler, I get some idea, just a rough idea in my mind of how much we have to come up off of that floor. We can come about 1 3/4 inches off of the floor, the most. And remember, the key thing, I want plenty of air flowing around this. I don't want to have an air dam here where there's no air going around this. And I want to have the option, if Rich Oliver or somebody else comes up with some little container muffler that we can put in here. I don't want to have this any higher than it has to be, but what this is going to do is give me something to think about tonight, and it'll give me some time to come up with an answer, come up with an idea that I think is going to work. Meanwhile, we got 2 fuselages ready for the tank floor. I guess I really shouldn't complain. And the best news of all, no snow at all, just rain. Well, we beat the snow again. It's just cold rain. I'm glad of that. Not really going to be a flying day, but they said maybe tomorrow to warm up to 45, so we're just going to play it by ear. But now that Karen's retired, we have a whole different lifestyle. And I'm not sure if retirement has been a trick or a treat for me. I'm not sure. So here's a typical morning. The mixer is sitting there all by itself. Karen makes coffee for her and our neighbor Chris. But do I get a cup of coffee? What happened to my coffee, Karen? Right down the drain.
You can have coffee.
What happened to my coffee? Oh, I don't know. My new lifestyle. So I really start, this is the stuff you can't make up. I really start off the day with a bang. I'm over at the grindstone this morning sharpening tools and not really paying attention, by the way, and look what happens to me. I almost took my eye out. Not funny. Don't do this at home. Anyway, the next step on this, and I made myself up a little priority list of what I thought was going to be the next step is, I want to, two things I probably can get done today or in this session. I can get the tank floor made up, I can get the pattern made and lay out the material, maybe even get it installed. And then I was thinking about going upstairs and taking the spinner off Millie and seeing if it's a 3-inch spinner, just so I can start laying out the nose ring, because there's going to be other parts of this that I'm very soon going to need something to lay out the 3-inch nose ring, and then start figuring out what the next step on this is. And of course, one of the things whenever you have a project like this, any prototype project, just figuring out what the next step is always, well, always part of the adventure of doing it. So the first thing we need to do here is make up a pattern. First thing I need to do is establish how high up I want to have the tank box, and I want to allow just enough that the tank box doesn't run into the header and maybe leave a 1/4 of an inch of air clearance. So I've already made that calculation, and I know I can make the box about 1 5/8 inches. So I'm going to make up 2 strips of wood at exactly 1 5/8 inches, and what that's going to do is lay on here and make sure that my tank floor, once I make the pattern and I'm going to make the material, the thing I don't want to have the tank floor in crooked this way or front to back. I want it perfectly parallel to this carbon fiber piece that we made. And to do that, to make 2 rails, that'll just make me a little shelf for alignment, and I can tack glue it in, make sure I can get the rails out, and then glue that in, because that becomes a structural part of the nose. That's not just an accessory. And we're going to spend a little extra time making sure we get, see, if we just made this cross-grain balsa, it'd be fine. But when you're talking about 10 years down the road, is this model going to start cracking and peeling and chipping? And, well, what I'm going to try to do is make up some material where the grain goes corner to corner. And that's a little involved, but the first thing I have to do is I have to make up the rails that are going to set the tank height. And I want to allow even a little extra. Now, you'd be amazed how many problems you can have if that tank box is even the least little bit crooked. You get these asymmetrical motor runs and all kind of crazy stuff happening. So what I want to do, I want to be working around, and I want to see if I have a dot that's already on here for the right size. I'll make it a little bit oversized to begin with. Now when I trim that, I'll do that with the jigsaw so I have a 90-degree edge. Now I know I want 5 inches of material, but because I have plenty, I can make these even a little bit longer. It'll just make getting them in and out just a little bit easier. When you're looking for a really nice, accurate motor run, the tank has to be in. And I've made planes where I just did this randomly thinking, I'll just fill it in with shims, and then the tank could be facing up, facing down. You trim the tank, now it's facing out. Now it's every time you touched it, the whole motor run changed. Well, getting this part accurate, I think, is going to be worth the time. Now, just to ensure that we know they're accurate, I can go end to end, and they're exactly the same. So now these are going to be part of what we use to jig up the tank box. And you can see how that'll allow me, I'm assuming way more shim than I really need, but these keep the tank floor in really nice and parallel. They're just in there on a press fit, and that's going to allow me to lay out the pattern now for the tank, that floor. Now in the olden days we used to just make this out of plywood or light ply. I haven't found that to be necessary. What I like to do is make it out of multi-grain balsa where the grain goes corner to corner. And when I do that, it saves weight. And what I'm really trying to do with this piece is connect the grain. Now we can just use what I'll call pattern wood. Make this a tad oversized. And we got to allow for the header clearance and for the tank, the little piece in the back where we put the tank hole down. Now with these pieces in as acting as a guide to keep this parallel to my shim, this is a very tight fit. In fact, I'm going to have to do a little fine tuning. It's a little too tight. But when I make the final parts, then I'll do the final fit. Now I also need to know how far back I'm going to be before I hit the header. So what I have to do is I have to pretty much trim these pieces back so they don't hit the engine. But that gives me a good alignment. That really gets a nice accurate alignment, I hope, in the final product. And when I make the material up, the objective is to connect the corners at all. Yeah, I don't care if it goes side to side, although what I'll probably do is laminate up thin pieces of balsa, but I want at least one to go corner to corner. Now I need to lay out where we're going to have an interference fit on the header, if any. And it looks like that's going to be fine. In fact, it's just going to touch, so I need to make this maybe a 64th, maybe a little more. I got to trim this back about 1/8 of an inch, just to allow some clearance around that header. Because I'm assuming Joe is going to use that little spacer. In my case, because I'm not, that'll move that forward. It won't be a problem. But I want these both to fit a stock engine or Rich Jacobone's engine or Joe's engine. I don't want to make it that it's custom for me. I want to make it that it fits every engine, and then mine will just allow a little extra clearance. Or if Joe wants to have his engine modified, that's up to him. Okay, so now we have a relatively accurate pattern. When I make the material up, and it's going to be cross laminated and inside laminated, 3 layers. And maybe what I'll do is I'll make this out of 3 layers of, I think I have some, I'm not sure if I have some sea grain. Would be nice if I could make this out of sea grain. I'll have to find some. 3 layers, corner to corner, corner to corner, and straight across. Then I need to make a little relief in the back for the way I've been installing the tanks, like in a Novanta. Because it's a carbon tank, the back edge of the tank rests up on the bulkhead, and then I make a little bit of a indent and put a little piece of 1/4 inch square wood and 1 drop of CA, and I've not had a problem with that at all. That's been one of the things that's been really bulletproof. So next step, make up the material and see if I can find some sea grain stuff to make this out of, and make 2 of them. Now it's always easier, I think, to make this, and again I'm trying to connect the corners here. I need to make up some material, but I'm going to have to make it up just a little bit bigger than what I think. So let me make the first 2 parts up. This is the easiest way to do it, I hope. I think. Step 1, and because I do want to connect corner to corner. It seems like, again, like this might be a lot of work for a part that you can just make a piece of light ply, but this will be stronger than light ply. It'll get a better glue seam. There'll be a lot of advantages to doing it this way, and it'll be totally stronger in every way. There'll be no dimension in which we don't have. In other words, anytime you have a box, what you're trying to do is keep the corners. When you go to twist a box, you're changing the dimension between the corners. This, by having the grain right in the corners, you really ensure that you're stacking the deck in your favor in terms of vibration. Now once these are cut out, I'm just going to add that little piece on the corner. But I'll work off of this piece first. Cut them all out with a brand new blade. Work off of this piece as an accurate pattern. And then one side will have the joint, the grain going that way, one side that way. And it'll be like, almost like balsa plywood when it's done. And making up this balsa plywood, when you're done with it, you'd be amazed how strong it is. And it's relatively light. Two characteristics we like having in this particular plane. And it's getting the grain to go corner to corner. That's the big advantage. Now this is always the easiest way to do multi-grain. Sounds like food, doesn't it? Because if you cut the parts all to shape, it's hard to get them all lined up. But if you cut one and then using this, I did this one real accurate, so now this one is now my pattern to glue on the next one. So now if you just take this part off, and it won't really matter. I want to get the grain going in the right direction. Now the trick is, once this glue is dry, is use the original part. Don't try to line them all up and then glue them. Just use the original part for your pattern. Leave the line on, it'll make it just a little bit bigger than it has to be, and then you can get it very symmetrical. A couple of swipes of sandpaper for a press fit. So in the final piece, now I've got this corner connected to this corner, and it's really to your advantage. The middle piece is side to side, but to connect the other two corners, you don't want to have the both going in the same direction. So this works out to be a real nice piece of material, super light and super strong, and it replaces what normally would be a piece of plywood or light ply. And I think in every way it can be stronger. I think it's stronger. Okay, now we want to put the spacers in, and we know the spacers are going to keep this hopefully in some kind of decent alignment. The next thing I need to do is cut the little relief out of the back with a Dremel tool so I can get in there and get that little tank shim. Here's where this, well, just an ordinary ink marker and some of the sticky back Bernie Trent sandpaper comes in real handy. That's going to be our access to get at that tank shim, because remember, you can't, what I can't do, well, Joe may want to use a metal tank or whatever, is you need to slide the tank in, and then this shim, the shim that's on top, we just peg in with a little piece of 1/4 inch square balsa wood, rather than trying to put a shim in and hammer it in. And when you hammer shims, all the weight of a carbon tank has to be right on the edge. Now if you're using a metal tank, that can change, but it's still better not to get any pressure on them, as Chris Rudd and Rich Jacobone both found out. Better to put all the support of the tank on the end caps. Now because I made this part on purpose, just a little bit oversized, the thickness of a pen line, now I know, see, I could force that in there, but I want to have it exactly. I want to have it absolutely accurate. Now one of the ways to do this, and this is not really high tech, but it works every time, is I get one side, and I can't really hold it there with one hand, and I can estimate how much I have to take off, 1/64 of an inch. But I'll get both sides that it'll be the same press fit. Then I know I'm maintaining this all at 90 degrees. Now when you want to take just what amounts to be the thickness of a line off, very difficult with a knife, a hand sanding block, sometimes you don't get the angle exactly the way you want it. But because I have the table set here for 90 degrees, usually that's a little more accurate. I'm a little hesitant to use power tools today. After this morning, after taking my eye out. Almost taking my eye out. It's unbelievable. Embarrassing. This helps maintain the 90 too. So now we know we've maintained good 90s on everything. That may need one more swipe of sandpaper to be a nice press fit. And we know the front and the back are exactly the same dimension. And then I want to have, as a double insurance, that I have a press fit on that end, and I have a press fit on this end. And now once I put this part in place, before I put it in place, I want to seal with thin CA all of the edges. The reason for that is then when I glue, I'm gluing, I don't expect the glue to wick down into all this end grain. So pre-gluing all the edges. It'll also fuel-proof it in here if the day ever comes that we get, and these modern ships don't get a drop of oil in the tank area. The Novanta is perfectly dry, but it's cheap insurance. Always worth it pre-gluing these edges. Definitely going to make for a stronger joint. And we really worked on getting this to be a precision fit, because this part, this is not a cosmetic part like a wingtip or a canopy. This is a part that's going to be transmitting vibration, hopefully for a lot of years, for a lot of flights, a lot of wild hog adventures. Now, the part when you do pre-glue it, sometimes it grows a couple of thousand, so you need to swipe it to a sandpaper. But that gets a lot better of a glue fit. When I seal this, that should be a lot better of a fit. Now the last thing before I glue it in, I want to put a little bit of an edge or an angle on this. And I can do that over by the belt sander. The reason is I want this to act the way it is right now. As air is flowing in there, it's not going to flow as well as if I have a little bit of an airfoil going up. Just be free insurance. And that little angle, that'll act just a little bit more like getting the air to flow up instead of acting like a little air dam at a spot, and it's a critical spot in the airplane, right under the header where that's going to reside. You can see what I'm trying to do here. By having a flat edge, all you're doing is creating turbulence there, kind of like the exact opposite of what you would want. So that's where that, when that resides in the model like that, well, it's a nice tight fit. This is pretty much ready to glue in. All the edges are sealed, and it's a 90 on every dimension that we can measure. Now one time when I did this, I made a beautiful mistake, just like the things you try not to do more than once per lifetime. I ran a glue seam, and then I glued what was the shim separator in there permanently. So I don't really want to do that now. What I want to do is, I want to put a drop in each corner. Just a drop. And let's hope we can move. Yep. And once that kicks off, I'll just double check that the shim will go in and out nice and straight. It'll also allow us that, what I'm hoping is that if I find a tank shim that works, I can pass it on to Joe and or to other people, assuming we're using the same tank. And there's nothing to eliminate the fact Joe makes these beautiful stainless steel metal tanks. We may find the motor runs just as good or better with those tanks. So we want to have the purpose of a tank box is to have all the options. Okay, now I know it's perfectly straight. I could run what amounts to be a permanent glue seam around the whole edge. The trick is to always complete the box. This completes the nose section box. And what I'll do is I'll turn it over and drip CA down into that corner, and that should make for a really nice strong nose. It should really be solid. Okay, that's one of them out of the way. Now, through the magic of video, we'll just do the other one off camera, pretty much the same. And I think we've accomplished all the things we wanted to. We have plenty of clearance. We have an infinite amount, way more than we'll probably need to shim tanks, put tanks in on angles. A wide nose gives you a lot of choices. And again, that's what we're striving for, is that the Spitfire having that very parabolic spinner and that wide nose and the ogive. All of that is going to be contained right in there. And of course the biggest thing of all is having a sound of the 90. Boy, that's the part of this project that really I think about. Okay, that's that. We'll get the other one done off camera and then move on to the next step. Anyway, this thing is healing up, but look how close I got to my eye here. This was not funny at all. This was really not funny. Don't do this at home. Through the magic of video, the other one goes much quicker. You know, it goes quicker just because you're not shooting video and setting up all these show and tell things. Anyway, what I want to do, I want to go up to the Spitfire bedroom, and I want to see if that spinner on Al's plane can be of any value while we're waiting to finalize a spinner fit here. And I'm not even sure it's the right size, but it's a good time to take a break. It looks like it's going to snow or rain or something. And I'm really happy that in a very short session, we got this out of the way. Moving one more step ahead. Now, whenever I need a little inspiration, or I just need to think how I want to do something or how it would look in full scale, now this is a good, coming up to the Spitfire bedroom, is a good place to just get some inspiration, get some thoughts in my mind of how I want to do something. We have so many choices, so many different things up here that they let me think outside the box just a little bit. Most of these models required a lot of these decisions where you had to think outside the box. You had to think, what was this going to look like in full scale? What was it going to look like, for instance, on this one, the turtle deck mold, that's a molded piece of balsa. On the Seafire, the whole top is molded, and I've got to start getting those molds back in shape because Rich Walbridge is going to want some parts. But what I wanted to look at now, when the trip that we were in Texas, Al Raby let me take Millie home, and I've had him up here in a Spitfire bedroom, and I always enjoy looking at Al's work and some of the craftsmanship and work, but it gives me some ideas how things are going to look in full scale. In other words, here's a more traditional stunt ship with a thinner body, wider body. I can put them side by side and I can say, where is my compromise going to be on this? Now, the thing I wanted to look at now, because the next thing I have to make a decision on is some kind of a spinner, shape, nose ring, or whatever, before I can really go on to the next step of this project. So I thought, well, how convenient is that? We'll come up here and take a look at what this spinner looks like in particular. And I don't even know if it's 3 inches in diameter or close or what, but see if we're going to have, if we can use it in some positive way. I guess that's the right way to put it. I'm not sure. Again, I like to look at, because the thing is, I'm looking at the ogive that Al has done, and that's a P51 ogive. He's got some nice ideas on the exhaust manifolds, but of course keep in mind a P51 exhaust is totally different. But the spinner may give us, well, because this body is basically exactly as wide as our body is, probably relative to the scale of the wing, we're talking about exactly the same scale. So this may be, well, this may be something that we can use to our benefit. And I'm not sure, but we have it right at our disposal here. I don't even know what kind of spinner that is. Well, anyway, this will just give us some food for thought. I'll take that spinner down and see if we're going to, well, if it's going to be of some value in what we're doing. But again, I'm not going to know, and if it isn't, I can just come basically put it right back on the model. But we always get back to that issue of how is something going to look in full scale. And now that I have some Mylar, I can make up a more accurate drawing, but it's still a critical thing to see it in full scale, in full size, no matter what it is, whether it's a cockpit, the detailing, the riveting, these exhausts. Totally different than a P51. The spinners, of course, having a bigger diameter spinner, the whole nose gets more realistic because it's shorter. And these are just some of the things that, well, having the models that we can look at them in full scale and compare them to Al's plane, and then come up with the compromise that we're happy with. This is really giving us a big asset. And it's something, I don't know what it is. There's definitely something about spending a half hour, 45 minutes, having a cup of coffee up here. I'm not sure what it is, but I wind up going back to the shop all rejuvenated. Now after having a cup of coffee and thinking about this, I realize this is a 3.5 inch spinner too, and that's not going to work for us, so there's no point even taking it off the model, but it's the shape. I could copy the shape, and actually in some way just even seeing it bigger than it would be is giving me some thoughts here, because as I look down the top of the fuselage is wider. I thought it was 3 inches, but it's really 3.5. But it's still going to be useful just to see these things in real life, because that's what's different than a model like Al's or like the Spitfire and a more traditional model. And that's what, I guess in a lot of ways, lets it stand out in a crowd. It's just the fact that it's not exactly like most of the other ships that are out on the appearance point line. Anyway, we got something out of this, and we can't use that spinner. And at the end of a nice think tank session,
we got a clear signal.
There's always one place the weather is bright and sunny and you can fly until the coffee's all out of the cup.
Supposed to wait here for a faster after.
This room really does hold some special memories, and always a good way to relax on a rainy day.
I'll meet Charlie at station master and see what's up.
You dogs were out flying this morning while I'm stuck here. Yeah, Joe's going to come up, I'm not sure, one day next week. He's going to try to get it if you guys want to hang out.
For your fuel tank?
Oh yeah, plenty. Plenty.
I guess you have to make it wider.
Yeah, yeah. You make a wider than normal tank.
Very nice, really.
Now what you gonna do? You gonna put your ARF together now? What's your next project?
Yeah. ARF.
You gonna do the ARF for Dooley?
Yep. ARF for Dooley.
You never have too many ARFs, and you're lucky you got the one you got.
But the tail wheel broke off.
Oh, send it back to China.
Now,
That looks nice, right?
This is all balsa, or you have
Yeah.
a layer of plywood?
That I just did that this morning. That's a cross grain, corner to corner,
But it's only balsa.
balsa wood. Yeah.
Right.
Very nice.
Oh, John's got the wing.
You're going to be taking this off, right?
7 ounce. Look, Brian, there goes a piece on the floor.
Oh,
You're going
man.
to take all of this out.
That comes out when you're done. Yeah. How's that wing look, John?
Holy shit.
Dihedral looks good, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, it looks great.
Very nice. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm excited. I was going to make another drawing. I got some Mylar. I was going to make a better drawing for Joe, but
Why are all the little...
that's from laser cutting.
Oh, that's laser cut.
When you cut, it leaves
Yeah.
it so the piece
So you
doesn't
can
jump
knock it
out.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you can knock it out.
These wings look nice.
Yeah.
Joe did one job. I got another one upstairs. He did some job on that.
Watch this piece of come out. That's
Hey, you guys would break it. He'll make another one.
No problem.
No problem.
You guys can make wings like there's no tomorrow. Very nice.
That's nice workmanship, huh?
Oh, yeah. Joe did a nice job.
nice and light.
We're going to try to make
There's-
these
there's-
parts, try to
there's
make
the-
molded
there's the
shells for
Adamusco.
everything.
There's the Adamusco. Captain Joe Adamusco, RAF.
Captain Joe Adamusco.
This,
Rolls-Royce Rojet.
Richard Oliver will like that.
I guess this is what it weighs. 7.4.
Yeah, 7 ounces.
He's making the old spec.
I don't know yet. We got to make the molds for both. I got the other molds for both of them, so it doesn't really matter.
Very nice.
So we're going to try to fly tomorrow morning? Is that the plan?
yeah.
But I envisioned you were going to have a greater dihedral than
No, that's got. You put it on the ground and look at
That's
it.
it.
If it had more than that, it wouldn't look like that. You know, the real plane doesn't have a lot of dihedral,
No. No, the real one.
but you could see it's got dihedral when you stand in front of
I
it.
can see it.
That dihedral jumps right out at you.
I don't think they had anyone flying a Spitfire with the last name Adamusco.
Yes, they
Maybe-
did. Oh,
maybe
yes.
Wilbur.
Do you know they had the Polish Air Force had Spitfires?
That's true.
The pilots that
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
escaped,
Yeah.
they used to have a little Polish emblem right up on the nose.
Very nice.
Nice size.
Are we going to try to fly tomorrow or what? The weather going to clear up? How
Yeah.
cold's it out there now? It's freezing out there.
No, it's not cold.
That was crappy. Kajeski is over at the other house doing a closet for the kid.
But this is not much bigger than the regular wing.
I'm not sure how many square inches it is, but the body is way bigger.
Couple inches.
About the same.
2 inches maybe, I don't
2
know.
inches or so.
I'd have to ask Joe. Joe's got the print. Joe's the wingman.
It's about 2 inches on each side.
So-
this to be
So if I get the van all loaded up for tomorrow, you're not going to disappoint me and have it
No.
rain or snow or something?
We don't know.
No, if the weather is good, we're going to fly. You know.
Yeah,
that's
but the
thing.
weather, yeah, it's been so unpredictable.
Yeah, well, that's what it is. You know, now from this point down.
Yeah, you really can't make too many plans.
Do you have any?
Now, while John and Rich were here, we went over, looked through the spinner box, and I know this is going to become an ongoing problem because I asked Rich if he had any 3-inch spinners. He doesn't have any, of course, or even a 2 3/4. And the spinner is a critical part of this. So it's not one of the things we can just say, we'll do something else. On our Seafire, of course, we wound up having to make, Spitfire too, make spinners. And I was hoping, you know, we still might, that's one of the final choices. Rich Walbridge in an email said he would, or he had a 3-inch, or he was going to order one. I don't remember, but we'll still wait to see that, of course. And a big part of any semi-scale project is the nose. When you just put a nobler nose on a spinner, I don't know, you know, it's not a compromise I really want to make here. And that spinner, it's on the early marks, it's different, less parabolic than the late marks. But again, I'd like to have more choices. I'd like to have, well, even if I have to make 2 moles. So I took out my bag of spinners here. I usually have a box with a bunch of spinners in it. The biggest one I have one 2.5-inch one that I'm not sure, 2.5 is not going to do it. Unless Joe feels that's the best compromise, but if we do go with this, I can at least use these back plates up. And over the course of my modeling career, I've got an endless supply of 2s, 2 1/4, 1 3/4, ones that I made. And there's only one problem. We never made a plane with a spinner this big, so this is going to be one of the things. This is the biggest one we've got so far. But we're going to, well, I think what I'm going to do is, while I'm waiting for this, and I'm waiting, we're waiting to see how Mike Kajeski's doing on his closet. At the end of the day, we're going to go over there and check out his, because I'm going to have to do some of the work on it, the electrical work and stuff. But I'm getting kind of antsy because I need something that I can make a nose ring out of, even if I have to improvise here. Now I just for laughs clicked on the True Turn website to see if they had any parabolic spinners, and they got plenty of them. And I don't want to move on this yet because I think we may, and once I link up with Joe, we may want to use 2 3/4-inch spinners. That 2 3/4-inch spinner looks like it has a pretty close shape to what we're looking for, but this day is coming to an end, and it ended quicker than I thought. And I need to get over there and see what Mike Kajeski's up to. He's working on the kid's closet, and we'll come back to spinners tomorrow. As this day ends, we're going to go sneak up on Mike Kajeski and see how he's doing. He's doing the closet over by Stacy and Rob's. And as I can very well bet, he's got it ripped out already. Oh, the Kajeski mobile, and I see him up in a window already. Ah, hey! He's up there. Mike! That bummy's got the vacuum going. Wherever Mike is, there are hundreds of garbage bags. Hey! Hey, what are you doing to this house? The building inspector's here. What are you doing in this beautiful house? Oh my God! Oh my God!
We know people in town.
It's just like the old days. All right. Oh, you got it framed out already. Wow. Oh, how nice is that?
Rob
That
says
couldn't
he
be
don't like
better. It couldn't be better.
Rob says he wants it bigger.
This is Stacy, isn't it?
All right, I'll pick up the stuff by Lowe's and get the electrical stuff and then work on this tomorrow. It's some adventure owning an old house. For the people that have never owned an old house, you don't know what you're missing, baby. You don't know what you're missing.
You gotta go out and buy one.
Yep, everybody should have this. So the phone rings early this morning. Look, there is almost no leaves, just birds in a tree. That's our tree that tells us the flying season is over, but you can see what's happened. It's been such a confusing pattern of weather that some of the trees have some leaves and some don't. So it's a confusing time, but the hogs wanted to try to go out early this morning, catch a couple flights before the air went bad, and they suckered me into coming up there. So let me see what they're doing. At this time of year, you never know. By the time I get there, we could be having a hurricane. Such a crazy year. Some trees still have the leaves, some don't. A year unlike any other. This has really been a crazy year. Well, it's certainly sunny, but it sure looks like even early in the morning here you can see the flags, the breezes blowing as we go past the train station. No shortage of geese this morning. No shortage of geese. If they do get some flights today, I bet there's going to be a problem with these guys flying around. The river's already got ripples on it, which usually means not going to be a real long day. Oh, looks like Buddy Weeder's here. Before I even get unloaded and get my my stuff out of the car, Buddy Weeder's getting a flight in.
See, this morning would have been good, but it was too cold.
You know what it is? When the air is good in the morning like this, it's way too cold. I had frost all over the car this morning. The car was white like it snowed.
You see the ice on the top of the table?
You had ice on the table? Yeah, they ain't gonna get much done today. Looks like a good building day. Good day to work on a closet with the kids. I gotta do the electrical work on that closet.
I launched Buddy's plane, my head.
I saw you were freezing.
My hands froze.
Hard to get excited about it today, I'm telling you.
And bring in my my garden hose, winterize my bird bath, and there you go.
Karen found a new thing with the birds. She put out potato chips this morning that will...
Is that wing giving up?
What?
I like the way their wing is.
What do you mean?
Watch. What is he going to do now? Watch. No, it's just flexing.
Well, all the wings flex a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's a good day to work on your Stuka, baby. What are you making up, the new wheel pants?
I'm going to make new wheel pants.
All right.
And I got to get another Venturi from Rich.
Yeah, we'll call him up today.
I don't have enough fuel.
He's moving today.
Is he moving? Oh, you want me to call him now when he's moving? He's going to say, yeah, I'm worried about your Venturi. In the meantime, I got to worry about my TV, my flat screen TV, where I'm going to put it, and this, that, the other thing.
Yeah, I wish I had
envy
such.
him.
I wish I had such problems.
I tell you, I don't envy him with all the stuff that he's got in his shop.
He's got a ton of stuff.
Oh, I know that.
It's unbelievable. So Karen was right. She says, why don't you go over and do the wiring on the kid's closet early this morning? I said, nah, see how the hogs are doing. What a mistake.
It's cold.
I'm not acclimated yet. You know, last year I was more acclimated because I was doing the work on the ARF, but this year I'm turning into an indoor cat, whether I like it or not.
Which plane do you have? You don't even have a plane in your car.
I got a plane. There's Novantas in there.
Novantas?
Are you blind?
Oh, yeah, it is.
Buddy's probably been outside. He's cheating. He's acclimated to this weather. So you got to get acclimated to this.
18 degrees.
18?
Morning when he left his house.
Oh.
Well, he lives in...
Yeah, I know. No, but it was... When I saw the frost on the car, I said, oh, man. I didn't even cover my pond yet. I got to cover the pond.
Running beautifully.
Oh, yeah, you got turbo power here, but problem is it uses a lot more fuel in this cold weather, too. It's cold. Jacobone looked like the abominable snowman launching it this morning.
He's a little chilly today.
He's a little.
He's a little on the chilly side.
Oh man, alive. Yeah, it looks like it's coming along nice. You got the lettering on there now?
Yeah.
Oh, Mara, you're all set, baby.
Ryan's eagle.
Yeah, that's nice. I like that.
He cried.
I like that.
He was so excited. He didn't know.
It's looking good.
You like that automotive clear? I hope I don't have to repair anything, I guess, right?
Yeah, look, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of another. Like everything in life, whatever you give up, you think it's free and then you get a bill at the end of your life. Like owning rental property.
Oh, yeah.
Now we want to see if Rich can launch two of these. Hey,
When you walk to the handle, walk a little faster because my hand.
hey, Rich, why don't you put some gloves on, you sissy? Hey, come out, you guys are going to be wearing mittens. I flew all last year with that ARF. I never put gloves on once.
Walk a little faster.
Look at these babies. Baby hog stunt team. What a joke. Where's Brian?
I don't know.
Brian's out killing animals again, or what's he doing?
I don't know. Who knows?
Oh, I don't want. What am I going to do with one glove?
So it looked like Buddy was going a little fast on the last flight. I guess he's going to open it up a bit. Now what Buddy ought to do is go out to the handle, John, and not give him the launch signal. Let him sit there and freeze for about 2 minutes. Just let him freeze. Look at
Right now.
Rich is freezing. Oh, my hands. Oh, my hands. Oh, listen to this crybaby. Oh, no, I'm so cold. Oh, my God. You should see the look on your face. Oh, man.
Buddy, hurry up.
Come on, launch that plane.
Run out.
Come on, buddy, launch that plane. Oh, you guys are so bad.
I'm glad you're not flying.
Yeah, then you'd have to launch my plane.
You too. Look at that hawk.
That hawk checking Buddy out?
Look, he's up there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You see him?
Yep. He's checking him out. Making a wish and checking it twice.
That don't look like a blue jay.
No, no.
I've never seen a bluebird with that much weight.
Yeah. Look at him.
Oh, you ever seen they fold them wings in? They come down
Oh,
with a
they dive.
dive.
Oh, yeah. They dive like
Like dive bombers, yeah.
Fold them wings
Stuka
right in the
dive
back.
bombers.
Come down like a shot.
There must be a lot of little life along the edge of that river that they're checking out.
Oh, yeah.
Because I noticed all the geese are up the other end of the field today. There must be some food up there.
Whatever they get, you know. They got good eyes.
Oh yeah. When they say they got a hawk eye, or what is the thing?
Power eyes. Yeah.
Hawkeye. That was my handle.
And you never see them wearing eyeglasses. That's the difference.
Hawkeye.
The Jersey Hawkeye.
The Hawkeyes.
Remember back then, in the 70s, everybody had a CB?
Oh, gee.
Holy cow.
All that crap.
Oh,
Remember,
well, that's what
shake your
happened.
leaves. Oh, Jesus, all
Oh
that
my
crap.
goodness, all that
Man,
nonsense.
the chatter, you couldn't get on a horn.
Everybody
Oh,
was talking.
Everybody.
What's your handle, Rich? Now it's that stupid email with the keyboard and text messaging.
Incredible.
I got the front door. Okay, I'll get the back door. I'll keep it closed for you.
Yeah. Now what's the difference, Rich? If it's illegal now to be on a cell phone while you drive, why isn't it illegal to be on a CB radio?
Because you're just asking for directions or something anymore. You don't even have that.
And why isn't it illegal for a cop to be on the radio when they're in a cop car and they're holding the transmitter there? Yeah, let's get fair about this.
Well, you fight that.
Yeah, I'm sure. I got a good case. Johnny Cochran, I'll dig him up out of the grave. He could be my lawyer.
So I hope they get that bastard Simpson, O.J. Simpson. I hope they get him. I'd like to see him spend 5 years in jail.
I like to see them put him in raw way in with the football players that have nothing to do all day but do exercise.
I really would like to see him go to jail for at least 5 years. Even 3 years.
I think he is.
You think so? I don't know. I tell you, I don't know. Although Las Vegas, it's a little different.
Yeah, but you know when you got these rich, these liberal judges, they let child molesters go. They let anybody goes.
They're now trying to determine whether or not they have a case against him. Whether or not they should.
You know what? If he gets off on a technicality, boy, there's going to be a lot of protests, though.
Protests.
Well, what about the other guys? They already arrested and pleaded guilty. His partners.
Yeah, they're
turning him in.
They're turning him in.
Yeah. So how the hell can he get away with it?
Well, the other guys, they're all also former, convicts. So what kind of, the defense attorney will turn around and say, well, he's a convict. What do you expect him to say? Of course, he'll cut any deal. My client is innocent. I could just hear it.
Oh, yeah.
Then who broke into the apartment and stole all the stuff?
Well, he was just retrieving his stuff.
Yeah.
It was all junk anyway, wasn't it? I mean, it wasn't diamond rings or anything.
Whatever it was. You don't have the right to break into an apartment.
No, of course not.
With a gun?
Yeah.
Right?
Ask my tenant, he'll tell you. He's still in jail. He may be in jail next year this time, I don't know.
Where's he at in jail?
Bergen County. Oh, you want to go see him, John?
No.
Why don't we go down? Visitation today, 2 to 5.
Let me see, 2 tenths.
Now, where are you going to put that? In the cowling?
Yeah, in the front of the cow.
That's not that much.
How much is this?
You can't put it on the crankshaft? You can't put like a regular nose weight on?
A
half ounce?
I
Or?
had that on last week,
That's right.
and
That's good.
I weighed it in grams
Right.
and put that amount of weight, in lead on there.
Yeah, but it's not in the same spot. It's not in the same spot. When it's on the
it's not.
crankshaft, it's above the vertical CG. Where you're putting it, it's below the CG. That's exactly the opposite.
Where
So
are you putting on top of the cow or the bottom?
Where do you want it?
Where'd you put it?
On the
Doesn't
bottom of the
matter.
cow.
Put it on top, right here.
Put it on top. For now. You put it on the bottom last
you're
time.
still better off putting a half ounce on the crankshaft.
Yeah.
Then you know where it is. You don't have any crankshaft weights? See, the other thing, the crankshaft weight is further forward.
I do, but it's heavy. It's really heavy.
And did you try it yet? Did you?
It's an ounce though.
Well, it's worth, an ounce is nothing. It's worth a try because you got the little things that are happening. I can't tell if it's you or the plane,
Yeah.
but it's doing them every flight. You know what I'm saying? It's not doing square, square, square. It's a hard corner and then a soft corner, a hard, soft, a hard. I don't know if that you're just adjusting to the plane but that's indicative of a tail-heavy plane.
Okay. It is extremely.
Here's what I would do when you were home. Measure exactly with 2 pencil erasers. You got to be exact to within a 1/16 of an inch.
Get a hot dog.
Or if you want to do it over by my house, bring it over to my house. And you got to know where the CG is.
How do I
Then
do that?
where it balances.
Oh, okay.
Okay, then go out to the lead outs, and the lead outs should be an inch further back. See, this looks like I can't tell where this balances, but.
Should I move back or wait till?
Well, no, what I'm saying, these are things you should try. Now, you got a day today when nobody else is flying, so you get meaningful data.
And I said, okay.
Thanks,
Yeah,
John.
You know?
it's good. And hey, Wendy.
Now, granted, we're in some real cold and real funky air, but there's still some things we could check. Now, one of the biggest things with Buddy that I think he possibly didn't do is get the lead out location relative to the CG at the fuselage. And if he gets that right, see what's happening too, in level flight, it's really not settling in. And then in corners, one is real nice, and the next one is kind of soft, kind of, and then it'll hit a nice hard corner. So but again, this is just some basic 101, all the stuff that's on the bench trimming video. And I'm sure Buddy already has a copy, but he might not have done that, or he might have skipped that step or whatever. So, and he can always come down the house when this is done, and we could check it with our little gauge too. Now let's see if you can get Rich's hands to freeze into a permanent location.
Did I take long enough to answer?
Walk a little slower, buddy. Have a cup of, when it starts, come over by me, we'll have a cup of coffee while Rich is holding the plate. Too bad. I'll go get the Tiger Cat off the rack and we'll fly the Tiger Cat tomorrow. How's that sound?
Oh. Yeah, but it's got to be colder.
I think we should be home building. See what happens when you start off with the lead outs too far forward, maybe that's the only problem he's got here. The plane just gets too sensitive. And that's what Buddy's dealing with right now. It's difficult to get all the turns the same. He was practicing wing overs and things, and it's difficult to just get it to where it just locks in every time. If it would warm up about 40 more degrees, it would be a little better too, but.
Up. It's just that the wind is
yeah. Well, I was gonna shut down the pond today and clean up the leaves and stuff, and I said, "Shit, it's too cold for that too." See back there, look, Rich, right here. There's no corner there. It's getting mushy. And I don't know. I don't think that's him because he doesn't do that with his Cavalier.
Well, he moved the lines closer together.
Yeah, but that's only going to mask over a problem. That's not curing it. See, the outside corners look a lot better than the inside corners too, more consistent.
Oh, that was all right.
Yeah, but the problem is they're not all the same. There's good ones and bad ones, and they're not. If they're all good or all bad, it would be a lot easier to trim. It could be he's just cold. You know, when you're cold, it's hard to concentrate too.
Yeah, your hand is freezing around the handle.
I remember last year coming here and there was ice on that water, pulling out the ARF. Let's fly, baby. See, now those corners up on top on the insides are mushy. It's the inside part that's worse than the outside. It may be that he needs a little flap tweak too. It could be going soft there too. See, right there it's bad. Right there. It's free flighting. In fact, he didn't even finish the maneuver.
You didn't finish the square right.
No, but I say if you could identify these problems, I mean, it's not unflyable air here either. It's just not great air.
He still has to work on that plane.
Every new plane is like this. You know, I was just making a copy of the video the other day where we flew your Stuka for the first time. Right about the time I was working on a B-25. There's a big smile on your face after you flew it. Well, see, that's... I wonder if he just doesn't need a little tip weight in there, too. You know, it could be light on... And this might be one of those planes that's got a bigger inboard wing where it doesn't carry a lot of tip weight. Ooh. This might be a little more difficult to trim than we originally thought. You can just tell Buddy to get here early in the morning, earlier, when it's way below freezing.
I'm surprised they didn't hit that trailer with the graffiti.
Yeah, what was that graffiti all about?
I don't know.
I came here one day and there was all graffiti there. We have the graffiti trailer.
Some stupid kid.
The punks of Palisade Park.
What they need is a good swift kick in the ass.
All right, let's see if it, now that had a little bit of nose weight, the clay in the nose, let's see if you like that a little better. But again, what the plane is showing me, I would be thinking it isn't going to hurt to put a 1/4 ounce more tip weight in there either. Just to see if it cleans up some of those inside things. It does outsides real nice, but the insides get funky going across the top. Now we'll see what he says. What is it doing? It's turning tighter for you inside?
Tighter insides than outsides.
Well, can you bias that handle a little bit? Yeah. Okay, bring the handle in and we'll bias it. You know, just shorten up, move the up line closer to your hand. Yeah. And we'll try that.
Now, is there a possibility I don't have everything lined up exactly?
Oh, absolutely, because when this plane flies level, it's constantly rising and falling. But you could...
If it's turning better one way or the other, or if it's more sensitive one way or the other, that's when you adjust your handle, one line, closer.
Okay.
You know?
Now, you're happy with the way it turns outside, but you'd like to make it turn slower inside.
Right.
Take the up line and just move it down 1/8 of an inch, a little bit at a time. And then, of course, you got to readjust neutral. But the thing that I see, too, the plane doesn't lock into level flight.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? And that usually the lead out's being too far forward. That's the culprit. But you really can't check it at the field unless you have a gauge.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to drop the handle, the lead out down, smidgen.
Yeah.
The up line.
Yeah.
Move it down.
Make sure he does the right way, Rich. And then none of these, you can always mark it and go back to where you were. Actually, for a day like today, this is a good thing to do, is a lot of these little adjustments today, rather than use what could be a day for doing good stunt patterns. Because again, this time of year, we don't have unlimited days, so actually what we'll do today is just give Buddy the whole day. I'm not even in the mood to fly. We were up so late last night, it's, get up in the morning, I can hardly wake up anymore. Just getting too old. We'll see if this is going to... See, a lot of these things, if you can just know that you're going in the right direction. In other words, if he goes in an 1/8 of an inch and it gets better, well, the next thing you want to do is go in another 1/8 of an inch. And at some point in time, it's not going to get better. Then back out a 1/16 of an inch and you've probably got pretty close to the optimum setting. I would still rather have the weight on the crankshaft. Clay, I don't know, there's just something about clay that, not my first choice. Now what you try to do on the next flight is try to see if you can tell me if there's any place where the plane isn't feeling solid. Because here's what I see. It looks like you still need a flap tweak. On insides it's soft, and on outsides it's fine. So it could be that what you really need is a tiny, and we could try that. I have little tabs we can try.
Tab on it.
Okay, but what I'm saying is when it locks in real good and outside and it's soft and inside, that's just a flap tweak.
Okay. So you would want more.
Where's the tab? On the bottom of the outboard wing?
Yep.
Well, you could make it a little bit smaller.
Oh,
Or
less to-
bend it a little less, yeah, because you want more up. But first get this handle thing equal.
Okay.
First, let's do one thing at a time.
Yeah, shift it again. Be careful.
Well, the air's, look, this is a good day to do this. It's a good day because when you get good air, you want to fly patterns.
Yeah.
It's a good day to do some of this preliminary trim. You know what we're looking for, if this feels better and gets better, then go a little bit more, and to the point where it gets worse, and then go back. So you know you're at the optimum point.
Okay.
Oh, you can move the other one down.
Okay.
To the down line,
Yeah.
you move it down.
Okay.
So it's the same thing, you know?
Okay, what did he move it? About 1/8 of an inch?
Yeah.
Okay. That isn't gonna, you know, it's not gonna be a radical change, but if it gets better, you can just go another 1/8 of an inch.
Well, you can move the down line away.
Well, he said he likes the way it turns outside. He's
I know,
happy
but what
with
I'm
it.
saying is if you can't move the up line down, you move the down line down, right? Because you have the same result.
Yeah, but then it gets too sensitive down. Oh, yeah, or you make a handle that you can make these adjustments. What is it, a CAS handle?
Yeah.
Okay, then you run out of adjustment, you get out the Dremel tool and then modify it. Oh, stop it, Chicky, stop it. Oh my God. Karen put out potato chips this morning for the birds. Oh, like, every bird in the neighborhood, the word must have went out on the internet. Potato chips at Wendy's.
They like potatoes?
Oh, they love them. They love them. There's grease in them or something.
Yeah, and also salt.
Salt. See, it still doesn't have those two top corners. It doesn't, it seems like it's not happy making those turns.
Yeah, it might need a little more tip weight.
Yeah, well, but you see, an unequal plane only will carry so much tip weight, and then it starts rocking. It rocks the boat.
That's true.
I started looking up on the internet yesterday some of the spinner choices for the Spitfire. Man, they make 1,000 different spinners. I wish you could see them in real life, you know, before you have to shell out the money.
I don't like those screw turn spinners.
Well, I don't know what choices we're going to have here because I haven't been able to link up with Joe yet to see if he's got any ideas. I mean, we can't use a 2 1/4. It's too small. It's got to be bigger. And the big spinners are all heavy. So I don't know. I'm probably going to have to just make my own spinner. I don't know. We go find out.
An old Throom would work.
Yes, if you could find one. And believe it or not, they did make them that big. They made them.
I know that.
They made some big giant ones. You know, you're never going to find one though. It's got to be painted anyway. It's not going to be silver, so it doesn't matter what the material is made out of.
You painted?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not going to be silver where you got to have it polished or something. You know what we need is those things they have at the football games, those propane heated benches where you sit on a hot bench.
They blow hot air at
Yeah, right. You imagine those ice road truckers? They must, and one guy had no heat in the cab. His feet were all frostbitten and everything.
Well, I drove back from Vermont with my other car. It blew a fuse, and I couldn't get a fuse for the heater.
Yeah.
And I drove back from Vermont with no heat.
Oh, God.
I tell you, it was brutal.
There was even
snow. There was snow on the floorboard.
Oh, don't even tell me. It's making my feet colder.
There was still snow on the floorboards when we got out of the car here.
Now, if it's better, you still can go a little bit more. You know, in other words, at some future time. Just, you got to decide when it's comfortable for you. But it's...
Is it flying better?
Well, you can't see the flying. It's how it feels. Does it feel soft on insides?
Softer.
Okay, then move that tab. Just get rid of some of that tab, just a little bit.
Okay.
Because that tab is making it soft on insides.
These jobs, right?
Yeah, that's it. Get one, if that's 3/10, get one that's a ½ ounce. That's an ounce.
Yeah.
You need a ½ ounce one.
So
yeah,
I
that's
can-
an ounce.
Do they sell them?
Sure.
Oh, I was
Linda probably has them. No, you don't have to grind nothing. Just buy one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I got this
$2
one, I got a heavier one.
No, you don't need it. I don't think you
How's
need
this
it.
one?
That's an ounce and a half.
You don't need that, Mama.
They make them. They're all balanced. You don't have to worry, and they're plated so they don't rust.
Yeah,
just
that's good.
just buy
Okay.
one. Or call Brodax. They'll
No.
send it right to your house. You know.
Yeah.
Do you want that glass? Go to John's house. I'll go with you if you want. Because he's got 2 pieces.
Okay.
Building table glass.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's the stuff I got. Sure.
Okay.
That's good stuff.
Sure. But I don't know how to get to your house.
I'll, what do you mean? You don't have to go to his house.
Well,
You
he's
go-
got a DVD for me.
Oh!
I don't want to get.
Oh, well, the 3 of us will go to...
All right. So what? If John's going to cut the door, why don't you guys go get the glass? I'll go home and start copying another copy of the DVD for you. When you get there, we'll have a cup of coffee, hang out for a little while, and I'll balance your plane for you. I got the balancer there, the thing with the 2.
Yeah, but I'm not going. I'm not coming to your house.
Why not?
Today. No, I got things to do.
Well, John knows how to get there, so just grab John.
Yeah, but he may not want to go right away. He's paying.
So hang out with him for a little while.
I really can't. I got no heat at home.
No heat.
Yeah, it's 60 degrees and dropping.
Oh no.
I had a guy over yesterday to.
You didn't pay the bill, huh?
So why don't you pick up that DVD another day?
You pick it up another day.
Okay.
In the meantime, you can get the glass from John.
Yeah, get the glass for sure.
Because he's got 2 pieces.
Well, it was worth coming up here just to give Buddy a hand with these trim things, but it certainly was not a prime day. Not one of the days years from now we'll look back at and say, boy, wasn't that a fun day freezing out here. And poor Rich Jacobone, his hands are killing him. But anyway, get a little bit of trim for Buddy Weeder. I got to get him a copy of that DVD I made of trimming his plane out. And we'll head back to the Hossie and get some hot soup or coffee or something. Check out the rod coming up here, baby. Whoa. That's pretty cool. Sunny California rods here. Always a moment of excitement on the way home. Pretty neat, pretty neat. You don't see a lot of these in this part of the country, but that's a good one. Nice headers. Always something interesting. Always something interesting. Look at this. They must be having a hot rod show somewhere here. Maybe there's a hot rod show and I don't even know it. Shame on me. And of course, my favorite, every time we go past here, I'm assuming it's the owner of the restaurant. It's this Ferrari. But I know it's not me. Everybody's got a Ferrari except poor Wendy. Boy, it's always nice getting back to Rutherford. The leaves, the trees, and in our case, some hot soup. Good day. Now, because the next step on this, or one of the next steps I should say, is going to be to set up a nose ring. What I wanted to do, because I wanted to get it very accurate, I wanted to take the piece right off the motor that we're using, so I don't have any variation in how far forward that nose ring is going to go. And so as long as I had this apart, I did all the usual traditional maintenance on it, tightened up all the screws, cleaned it all up, because we're not going to fly this temporarily anyway. We set up the Spitfire. We're supposed to get some props from Rich Walbridge. We want to do some prop testing if we get any flyable days, but it was good that we got to help Buddy, and I always enjoy seeing that Ferrari there in front of the restaurant. He's there almost every day. But anyway, I want to have this, put all my little parts away in storage. We need to have the exact motor with the exact header to get some of these little clearances set in the nose, and this is really the most realistic, bulletproof way I know how to do this. When you try to fudge it and you just try to estimate it, never seems to work. It's always better to have the real engine right in place when you do this. Anyway, so today's project, and we'll get this, I'll just call it winterized for lack of a better word, get him winterized, get the Spitfire into the car, get the lines and handle ready in case we get a flying day, and I'm not sure, we got to get the props first, of course, but then we're one step ahead when it comes time to figuring out this spinner issue, and that is going to become a big issue very soon. Now, I took all the molds. We're going to be using these molds in the very near future. Took them all little spots that needed touching up, hit them with some spackle. There's always, when we get these back from people who borrowed them, just from shipping them to Texas and California and stuff, they always take a beating. And one of the things I wanted to do is just lay out a nose ring today if I can. Just get a look at, just a physical look at what this is going to look like. Alright, started off. This is the engine right out of the Novanta. Ready to go. Took up a prop that was broken, made a little spacer. This is a 2.5 inch Froome. It's a 2.5 inch back plate. And I know that's on a small side, but I want to get a look at, when I put this in the plane, just what the spacing is front to back. And I want to, if I have to, I can interpolate with a piece of 64th plywood just what 2 3/4 would look like and 3 inches. And of course, that's one of the things that it could determine the whole look at a model. If it's wrong, it's going to be not that good, and if we nail it, it'll be really nice. Now, when I look at this in full scale, see, on a drawing, I couldn't picture, because we need to have a little bit of, we can't have this just come straight out. It'll look too much like a Nobler. We got to allow for a little bit of a reverse, what Joe calls, or what is properly called, the ogive. But when I look at it from here, this looks like this size, and this is 2.5. This might be our first choice. I'm going to give some serious thought to making this 2.5. And what I'll do is, well, again, I'll go back to the internet, look up that True Turn. I know they make 2.5s, but the nice thing about if it's 2.5, I think we'll have more of a choice of spinner. And when I look at this in full scale, it can't be. If I make it any bigger than 2.5, it's going to have the look of like an Nobler, and that's so critical that it doesn't just blend right into the spinner. It's got to have a reverse curve out to have that look that we're looking for. So with this, now what this is going to allow me to do is just make up some plywood nose rings and get a look at that as the next step. Now I have to take into account, I have this machine down, but I also have a stock one. Take into account I want to have plenty of clearance in here. So it's going to be easier for me. Really, it's really not even a critical thing. It's not a precision thing, but this now is going to become the template for the back plate. So what I accomplished today here is just, and I thought I'd have more time, but it's time to go work on the kids' closet. I have to put the electrical work in today, so I just made a like a semi-corporate decision here after looking at all the different spinner sizes, that 3 is going to be too big, 2.5 is going to be too small, and I'm going to have to look at what the choices are going to be. And this is letting me look at it in full size, which is what I really want to do. I really want to have that look, but apparently this is going to have to wait for another session. But at least now I have the idea planted in my mind that this is probably the closest that I'm going to be able to get without making it, well, dramatically different than what we originally planned. And I wouldn't eliminate the idea that if this starts looking too big in the front, we can just drop it down to 2.5 and carve in the extra little amount, the extra small amount, just sand it right off the nose ring, because we'll always have our center. We can just put another back plate right over the engine, trace it out, and reduce it. But for right now, every day plays out differently here. I thought this was going to be you know, a little bit different, but turns out next session I'll start making up those, and I'll have some good time to think about it for the next day or so. Yeah, we were hoping we would get some flying in today, but it's down about 35 degrees out here, and I think it's a better day to start researching out what we're going to do about this spinner. I've been putting this off for a long time for obvious reasons, but I got to order a spinner today. Now, getting this spinner shape right is, I know it's going to be a major part, getting this O-drive right, the spinner shape, and I really didn't want to compromise. Rich Walbridge was going to send the spinner, but it isn't here yet, and I want to get moving on this. But we can always use, well, more than one spinner choice. Some of them have this real blunt. The early ones have a very blunt spinner. Later ones, of course, with the Griffin have a more parabolic spinner. But I think the True Turn had a, if I remember right, I was looking at the computer the other day, and maybe I should just order one and be done with it, a kind of a parabolic spinner. I'm going to go back on the website and check it out. And the good news is, if you get it right, it's really going to be one of the defining features of the plane. Especially with the wide fuselage in the front. That should, I'm assuming that should really be a defining feature. Well, let me look back on the website and see what True Turn has. Even if some later time we mold our own spinners, make our own, we got to have something to build the fuselage with right now. Now, luckily, the one thing we have working in our favor is we have plenty of pictures, so we should get this as close as we possibly can. I mean, right there, that's the shape I'm looking for. I'm going to fire up the computer here and look out on a True Turn website. You've got spinners, you've got mail. I love my computer. And certainly all those pictures that Rich Walbridge has been sending, they've been helpful too. Now, it's funny, you log on to the, I just thought I'd show this. How many spinners? This is just in the 2 3/4 inch range, but they do have one that looks pretty close. And again, this is all in the eye of the beholder here. This one here looks pretty close, and we're gonna order one of these. It's actually made for a P-51, 35 bucks, and we'll get the nut kit with it. I think that's what Joe had in a 2 1/4 inch, and it's pretty close to being the shape. I wouldn't say it's perfect, but it's a lot closer than some of the other ones. It's a lot closer, say, than some of these that like this shape would be at it, not even close. And some of these, and this is just in the 2 3/4 size. You can imagine if you go into the 2 inch size, there's way more choices. But we need to have, I'm guessing 3 inches is going to be too big. See, and this is right off the True Turn website. And they have these with special prop cutouts and standard prop cutouts, and I'm just going to get one. I'm going to order one up here for a 2-blade, and that looks like the number 2702, 35 bucks, and I'll get the nut kit for a Rojet 90, so we have all the hardware that's going to go with it. Now, but what's going to happen is we're going to have a couple of days waiting for, we'll probably have a week waiting for this to come in the mail. In the meantime, we got a lot of other little things that we could be working on, but I wanted to get this part of the project moving, and I'm shocked at how many choices there are in these spinners are unbelievable. And that's just True Turn. I haven't even looked up any other websites. But again, if somebody has some idea what might work, or if we got a 3-inch spinner, we certainly, because we have a lathe, we can cut it down. I'm not sure, and we always have the choice. And I know this spinner is going to be heavy. That we can lighten it up somehow, and yeah, well, we're going to have to give it a shot. And it's just one of the things that I really, well, we're making a commitment here to get started on this, so we can start looking at how it's going to look. And we can always, well, we can always get more than one spinner too, but we need to get started on it right now. And getting these in the mail, I'm going to see if these guys can ship it this week. Rich Oliver knows the people at True Turn, so we'll see see if this is going to work for us. Now, every year this time we start working on a wing, and of course we need a padded table. And I cleaned off all the little dots of CA, and we're just going to have to, well, we're going to have to sit and think about this spinner thing. I want to see what this spinner looks like when True Turn gets it here. But in the meantime, I can get some work prepped up on this wing, maybe even get the bell crank in one of them. What this is this is the pad, and I wanted to try this. I had bought a lot of this for these rugs that we use, the throw rugs that we work with in the kitchen and on the hardwood floors. And when I looked at it, I said, gee, that may be nice to have for padding up the work table. And we got a big extra piece. What I did, I wound up buying an enormous piece and cutting out all the sizes. I needed a 4x8 and a 12x3 and something else. And I got this big piece left over, and I got a bunch of scraps. So what I wanted to do is see if this was going to work. Maybe in 2 layers, 1 layer. What's nice about this, nothing slips on it. If you've ever had throw rugs in the house, again, we're going to try this. This is just one of the things I want to try. I'm not sure this is going to be something we want to have, but otherwise I have to go out and buy the egg crate thing that goes under a bed, under a mattress, on a mattress. Oh, this is going to be plenty big. I didn't know if this was going to cover the whole table. And most important, to cover the edge. So as things go around the edge, we don't damage it. Yeah, this looks like this is going to work fine. Now what I always do, I got plenty of scrap layers and scrap corners, all of the scraps from that job. And obviously you can just go buy one and use the whole pad. It's very inexpensive. I think it was around $10 for a gigantic sheet. But now what I want to do, I want to take an old bed sheet, cover this, just like making a bed, because this is now going to be my padded table that I want to do all my work on the wing. The wing is very delicate. I don't want to have, every time I go over and hit the edge of the table, I put a dent in it, especially on the one that Joe's going to take home. I don't want to have it full of dents. So I don't know if this is going to be the be-all end-all, but you can see it's got a little bit of give. Soft, but I don't want it so soft that everything falls in there. So yeah, that looks like it may work. But if it doesn't matter, because we already had this material, and it's very inexpensive. So the bed pads are usually $10 to $15. We've got a nice padded table, and I want to start looking at some of the work that we have to do on a wing. And again, I'm going to have to disassemble this. I'm going to have to take the tips off, take the flaps off, because the first thing I want to do is I want to take one of the bell crank. We had the bell crank assemblies. In fact, they're hanging up over there. Take one of the bell crank assemblies and see if we can slide it in here and see. The first thing I have to decide is the push rod going to go underneath or on the top? And I really want to do that methodically, because with the dihedral, the bell crank rides very high in the wing, and I don't want to make the opening in the top of the wing any bigger than it has to be. So step one is to disassemble all the loose parts, the flaps, the wing tips, so that I just have the core of the wing to work on, and then I can go from there. But the first job is to go make up another cup of coffee, because we have had so many things happening in this house at the same time that by the time I get down to the modeling and take care of all the emails and stuff, I'm ready for another cup of coffee. Now on purpose what I did is I only brought one wing down out of the attic. I didn't want to have the both wings down here at the same time because I didn't want to start confusing the parts, which part went with which wing, and Joe's got these sanded in beautifully, so I don't want to trade away any of his really nice workmanship. But I can get all of the tape off of here now. And the only problem with this tape, because it's been sitting in the attic, there's a lot of tape residue on here. And the first thing I have to do is get rid of some of that residue because I don't want that. I don't know if you can see this. Actually, it's not a good idea to use masking tape as such. Masking tape has a glue that it basically bonds to the wood better than it has to, and you wind up with this gummy residue everywhere you have masking tape if you let it sit for any length of time. And if you see what that tape has left, that residue on there. Now if you try to put Brodak dope over that, or if you try to sand it off, it's even worse. It just gums up, ruins your sandpaper, and drives it down into the wood. So the first step on this is I've got to get rid of all this tape residue. Now the first thing I wanted to try is M600 to see if that'll get rid of it. Again, one of the terrible lessons I learned the hard way, there was a time when I was building a plane that I had called the Blue Angel, and I had backmasked the whole plane. And what happened, I had other things in my life that took priority, and that tape stayed on there for a month or so. And then what happened is I put it out in a cold garage one day for whatever reason, and when I went the next day to take the tape off, oh my God, it was a nightmare. So I've always had this thing with tape that I don't like to leave tape on any longer than necessary. Now let's see if this M600 is going to take most of it off. Yeah, that takes it off. So just keep that in mind. There's also a product called Gooby that's good for getting rid of tape like that. Now I decided, just in case, because what I didn't anticipate, the day that Joe gets here, we're going to have these wings laying all over the cellar in pieces. I'm going to just put, this is on the inside, a little green dot on each piece that I take off of that wing. And what I'll do, and this I guess is a decent way to do this, what I really ought to do, I ought to identify this somehow as the green wing, as I have all these colored markers. So I can do it on the inside, just identify that it's the green wing, so that these parts, which are pretty well precision sanded right now, they don't get mixed, the orange tip to the green tip or whatever. Now what's really neat about the flaps, Joe has, this is incredibly good sea grain wood. This is some of the best wood I've seen in forever. He has really got this carved accurately. Now what I know he has a jig with a steel edge and a steel edge, so he can get this jacked up half of the thickness, and maybe we can get him to show that jig when he comes down here. That is one of the things that makes these flaps possible, and these are really going to be nice and solid. These are really nice. But again, I'm going to have a couple hours of work getting all this tape gum off. This gum is just on everything. Everywhere there was tape. So a small price to pay for having these wings framed out, but just keep in mind, and it's a good idea, if you're going to use tape, boy, get it off as soon as possible. Or in this case, I would have rather had, and I'll mark each one of these with a little dot on the end or something, just so I don't have to go through a dramatic thing if we were to crisscross these parts, because each part is going to go with a dedicated wing eventually. But these are nice flaps. I'm not sure you can see how perfectly straight that is, but boy, they are nice. And sea grain, that is some primo flap there, right there. And sanded to, all it needs is a finish sanding and rounding off the edges. Now in the last couple of days we picked up 2 new subscribers. One of them, a fella named Lee Concannon. And Lee Concannon is an interesting thing. He had just bought a Nobler kit, and in the course of looking at some of the videos, I mentioned to him that, and he was real happy with the presentation, but he noticed that we have Nobler videos Well, from those videos, I'm sure there are many good tips that things, even when I look back and make somebody a copy of the videos, I look back and I go, yeah, there's a good tip. There's one there. There's one there. They're just loaded with good tips. And what's even better, this happens to be one of them. Not leaving the tape on any longer than necessary, and it's my fault for leaving it on. Actually, when Joe was here, I should have marked all the parts, disassembled everything. I had no idea if we were going to get to work on this or what time, in what time window, but I just made myself a couple hours work for nothing here. But it doesn't matter. I'm going to get these all disassembled, mark the parts, and see if I can maybe at some point today even get the bell crank in. Or lay it out and see how it's going to fit in there. Now with the top part of the wing taken out, we can see where the bell crank is going to have to go and how we're going to have to slide it in there. That's going to be job one. We got all the tape residue out. We have the table padded, ready to start fitting up the bell crank. The tips are removed, so we can just see just about how this is going to snap together. And I thought right at this point in time it'd probably be smarter for me to do one wing, several of the steps, so I can see if I can come up with any way of making it better on the second one. If not, we can just do it redundantly. Now as I look at this, I'm trying to figure, see, the decision that I have to make is the bell crank, the push rod, going to come out the top or the bottom? Now it probably would be easier if this sheet wasn't installed, but it is installed. And I want to just look at this. I put a real long rod on here just to see where the wires are going to wind up in the wing itself. And it looks like we can use, actually we can use the rod holes on this side. That won't be a problem. And in the front, again, I was hoping to get the bell crank as high in a wing as possible, but there's a limiting factor. It can't come out the top where this sheeting gets cut here. And I don't even want to think about doing something like that where we're going to have a wing structural failure somewhere down the road. So from looking at this, and I'm just guessing, this is a wild guess, that let's see how we can do this that would make sense. There's another way I can do this, is build a little piece off of the back here, similar to what Joe has. But if I look in and I estimate that the bell crank's going to be down that far, again, the other choice I have is, the choices are, I can use the thinner arrow shaft, or I can even use a piece of 1/8" wire, just so this hole doesn't get enormous. And if it does get big, and it is going to get big, I'm going to have to double or triple glass the middle of the wing as a way of keeping the structure. The high point of this wing is right here. And this is where we need the structure, right here. We don't care about back here. I don't care about up here. Up here, this will be reinforced from the bulkhead. But back here, this is going to be the critical area, right around the bell crank mount, so that any reinforcement we put on a bell crank is going to actually be in our favor. It'll work as part of the structure. Now, the first thing I'm going to have to do is get rid of some of this wood. Now, this, Joe has on the inside of this a piece of it looks like 32nd or 64th plywood. So I'm going to have to just real carefully cut this piece out. I want to wind up with enough room that when I go to do the wingtip, I have all of these choices in here. And it'll just make pulling the lead out through the wing a lot easier, because I'll be able to look in this way and see any interference that I have, and I can either Dremel it out or gouge it out. It's that same old thing. Anytime you induce dihedral into a project, boy, it's like hitting a reset button on a calculator. Everything has to change. And in this case, we're willing to pay for this, but in terms of time and energy, but this is a whole ton of work different and more elaborate. More calculations have to be done, more things have to be right than if we were just building a straight wing plane. But when the model's done, I just think it's going to have a much more scale look. It's going to have a unique look. Now, this is a good chance to use one of the little tools we made, this just a little dowel, some sandpaper on it. Clean that up, just so we have a workmanlike edge to work with. When we start on actually how we're going to do the adjustable lead outs. Now that's going to allow me the full range, I hope, the full range of moving the lead outs front to back and up as much as I have to. And if I want, in the very end, just before I drop this on, I can take a little more. I can actually cut this whole piece out if I want. But that leaves it nice and solid for all the sanding operations too. Now what I made up just a piece of music wire with the end on it so I can see where the push rod track is going to be. Now here's the problem that we're going to wind up facing. I don't like to have the push rod way up or down. The push rod should be really as close to the bell crank as practical, within reason. Of course we don't want to interfere with that, but I don't want the push rod sticking way up or way down. So if I were to put it in upside down and leave it way out of the bell crank, maybe by 1/8 of an inch or so, well, I wouldn't be able to have a straight push rod. It would have a little bend going up. I'd like not to do that. But I need to lay out the geometry right now to see where this is going to go. And I think what's going to happen is, to get the bell crank in a temporary place here, I'm going to have to take out probably this rib here and then slide it in that way. I got to look and see what else is in the, but it's probably this rib is going to have to go. I'll have to zone saw that out. Now it could be that more are going to have to come out of there as we go along, but I wanted to look down and pretty much see I have a clear shot right at the bell crank this way. So the first thing I have to do is shorten this, shorten the bottom accordingly. I made this rod way oversized so I wouldn't have to worry. I need to shorten it probably 3/8 of an inch or so. And I need to put the knurls on it once I know the height I'm going to have, the final height. I want to knurl where this is going through the hardwood so it's just get a much better grip on the glue. Because this bell crank is not going to reside right in the middle of the wing. It's going to be up. So it's the rod length on both sides is going to be just a little bit different. Now what I did, I trimmed the rod, but it still needs to be trimmed a little bit more, and let me show why. Because as this is going to work its way up here, I don't want to cut into this spar. This is a structural member, and I can take probably another 1/8 of an inch off, and I'll be right in a position I have to be. Now once I figure this all out, what I'll do is I'll measure that rod so that on wing 2 I can just measure it and cut it. This way I'm nibbling away at it because I don't want to have it. The one thing I don't want to have here, I don't want to have a where that rod isn't long enough on the bottom. I want it to just come out to the end of the wing, the end of this hardwood spar, and that's motor mount material, by the way. Now once I have the height just right, now I need to knurl the little part that's going to sink down into that hardwood. Just get some knurls on it, so there's no way we're going to have the glue not get a good tooth in this bell crank. The first time you make a dihedral ship, the first time you make one, you're amazed at how many things are different than when you just make a straight winger, and you think, well, yeah, it's a lot of work. Boy, oh boy, like figuring out this. The length of this part of the bell crank has taken me about an hour to get exactly right, but I want it exactly right. Now I need to measure how much of this is going to stick out the top, and how much sticks out the top. I'll do the same knurling technique is on there. Now the next thing I have to get the interference off right here, where this bell crank's going to go through its rotation. When I have that plugged in, I have an interference here, so I have to trim this back. And it's always an issue with a built-up wing, getting that the bell crank isn't hitting any of the ribs and yet not cutting so much away that you lose the structure. But of course, in the end, I'm convinced we put all this back, it'll be just as strong as if we never cut it. Now that's about as asymmetrical as we're going to be able to make it. And I want want to mark. Now what I want to do is, whoops, and that'll give us a reasonable cut in the sheeting. I think we can live with that. But if we make it any higher than that, the push rod's got to come out the bottom, and that induces even some more problems that I don't want to deal with. One of them being a crooked push rod. I want to have a straight push rod, if absolutely at all possible, that the push rod is straight and doesn't have any bends in it. Now the next thing is I got to measure the height of this and get this wire knurled up here, cut off so that a bunch of it isn't hanging out here. Get that off and then make up the real push rod. And it's laid out, actually it's laid out pretty well, I shouldn't complain. But it's never just zip boom bang, there's always something. Now, and then I need to go through, once the push rod is installed, in fact I could even do it, just do a preliminary look down the lead outs and see any spot where the lead outs are rubbing, anywhere where there's an interference around here, and just carefully Dremel out the material, but I don't think there's going to be any. I think Joe's pretty well got this side, well he's got the both sides, and because this is, see the nice thing is this is 3/32 wood, so it's relatively stable. It's not like when 1/16 pieces, they pop and break out and everything. Now the only suggestion I have, if we were building another wing from scratch, I would make this rib, and this rib at a light ply. And I would make them maybe 3/16 of an inch, just a big perimeter, so that they're hollow inside. It would give us enough strength and not have to deal with all these cutouts and everything. Just make 3 big, like I-beam ribs at a light ply. But again, this is the ongoing operation. Now, next thing is, of course, to measure the push rod. I'm having trouble getting this. Measure the push rod length so that the next bell crank I can just make right up, and measure this bell crank, this length up here. I want it to come out just flush, and then knurl that last, well, 1/4 inch or so. Now if you look at the final product before we make the push rod up, you can see how well, I've got it reversed here, how much offset we've got in the bell crank, and that's quite a bit. Now the next thing is I'm going to make up a test push rod, just to see. In other words, I'm going to make one whole assembly here before I go work on the other one. I want to see how this is going to play out. I want to make a test push rod up just to see how that's going to play out, and if there's no interference, we can just replicate it onto the other bell crank. Now we got a lot of choices on push rod. I have oversized arrow shaft, undersized arrow shaft. What I thought would work here, I don't know if I have one with an end on it though. I guess I don't. Yeah, this is the traditional arrow shafts, and these are much thinner. So I wanted to see if I could use this, because again, what having the less thickness is, it doesn't stick up as much, and I won't have to cut as big of a hole in, ultimately cut the hole in the top sheeting, which is going to weaken it if I cut that hole too big. Now one of the things I always have to account for when I'm making up a push rod, the hole that's molded right into the bell crank, and remember the bell crank itself is a bearing material, is a couple of thousandths oversized, so that this takes into account the raising and lowering of the control horn. If you make this fit super tight and don't allow 1,000th or 2 of clearance, I think it's 2 or 3 thousandths, but I'm not sure, what happens is you'll get a bind at both ends of the bell crank travel, or you'll get something that's not going to be in your favor. So the first thing is I want to make sure that I don't have oversized wire. I've got that little bit of rock that'll allow for the control, and actually it'll be out here, it'll allow for the raising and lowering of the push rod. Now whenever you're going to try to do anything with these push rods, you've got to roughen this up some to get a good glue bond. And I may as well roughen the whole piece up at this point. I just take some 220 paper, roughen it up. And we have to bend the push rod wire. Get all the little links soldered on, and then attach. I'm only going to attach the end that goes into the bell crank at this time. This back end will get cut off when we do the final control system, and the final little piece of wire, and it'll be infinitely adjustable before we make it permanent. So we have an infinitely adjustable, it's as if we had ball links on both ends without the cost or the, in my case, I'm just not a ball link fan, but it doesn't mean if you're using ball links, these would really stick up. This would really be a deal breaker. So this is one of the ways we can kind of save, well, make it a little bit better on ourselves. And this is the way I've always attached these ends. And I'm sure other people have come up with other things, but the way I like to do these ends, the number one job is that they're bulletproof. Not that they're pretty, but that they're bulletproof. Now this gets a little tricky. I thought I'd lay this out, and I made this piece of wire in such a way that when I put the washers and the bushings on here, it'll clear that, but I'll be able to get the push rod on this side, which will give me a much, see, here's what happens. If this is up here, I've lost my straight line, and it's the straight line. You can picture, if you go to stick something, say, here's the way you can do a test. You want to push something here, and you want to push it from here. Well, the best way is a straight line. Pulling is no problem. You can pull with a piece of string. Now, if you go make a broomstick with a big bend in it and you push, the broomstick just bends. Or a bow and arrow. You push with a bow and arrow and it bends. So we're looking to keep the pivot point here and the pivot point at the horn as close as practical. So I'm going to what I'm going to do is just make a test push rod here, because I don't know how this is going to lay out. Now what I need to do is lay this out. I need to drill a hole in one side of this. And I've seen people and heard of people that have just put JB Weld in there and glued this in, and it's failed. The little hole is the best of all insurance purposes. That never fails. I hate to say that word, never fails, but once I lay that out, and I know I can go right to the end there, wrap that with carbon fiber, then I'm going to do my test. See how strong it is. Or if it flexes, or if I've got a stress riser or something I'm not happy with. I try not to take any more material off than I need to, because this little piece is going to snap in. And I'd like a relatively tight fit, and I want a straight line. So yes, my pivot point is down here. See, if I were to reverse this, and this were sticking up here, I've lost my straight shot. Pivot point to pivot point, a straight shot, from an engineering point of view, that's definitely the best way to do it. Now, I'm going to just tack glue this in here with some CA next. Once I have it nice and solid, then I'll wrap this with carbon fiber, and we'll be ready to lay out the geometry and see if this is going to be the way we want to do it. Now once I get a little bit of CA on there, I'm just waiting for it to kick. I want to make sure this is perfectly straight too. See, what I used to do in the very beginning, I do try to make these up before gluing this part on, and when I was all done with the carbon fiber, this would have a little bit of an angle on it, or an angle up or down, or something I didn't like, I wasn't happy with. Just remember, anytime you glue in a carbon fiber, it's got to be rough. Now, I just want to do a preliminary fit here. God, there's so many little operations to this dihedral. And when I have that up there, see how that'll clear? And I haven't lost my point to point, and I haven't raised this up. Now, if I had a ball length, this would be way the hell up there. And then that would change the geometry, and I can't have it interfere with this either. So I've got to be real careful here. When I solder the washer on there, I got to make sure that's up just that height, and I'll be safe. Anyway, this is ready now. Now we're ready to get some carbon fiber and thin CA and just put the final end on that and then do our test. Now you see we're near the end of another roll. And by the way, if anybody needs some of this carbon tow, don't go out on the internet and pay $15 for 3 feet. I'll send you some for free, because I buy this by the roll, and the way these guys that repackage it, they want your firstborn for 10 feet of it. Okay, I want to have about 3 feet to start with. That's always the starting point. And there's a little trick to wrapping this that works every time. And if you start with this and you don't know how to do it correctly, you wind up gluing your fingers to it, and just a nightmare. Let me show the way I've always had good luck doing this. Now, I just put a little bit of thick CA in there and buried that end in there. Now I can pull on this. When you can't, if you skip that step, what happens? Very, very difficult to get this. It just unballs at the end. Now, I'm going to try, and I'll try to do this on camera. I try to wrap this, and you see the material is flat, and I try to wrap as flat as I can right to the very end. Capture that last little piece. I want to go back twice, but I want to wrap it all the way first one time. This ensures that the CA gets down in there, and I want to go past at least maybe a quarter of an inch or so past the end, because the stress riser on this part would be right at the end. And these thin push rods are, I think Tom Morris sells them now, or Brodak, probably both. But they are lighter, and when you make a push rod up just like this, and if you just follow through with this, it goes pretty well. But I'm holding the material flat. Good idea to wear gloves anytime you're using carbon fiber and or CA. Doesn't matter if a few strands stick up, you're building up probably 1,000 pounds of strength doing it this way. Now when I get to the end, and this is where it would be most prone to break, I'd give it 1 or 2 extra. Now I need to put some tension on that. And just let that dry up. And that'll kick a matter of a minute or so. Of course, I've got my gloves glued to it, so I know it's going off. No kicker. When you put kicker on there, it turns into a popcorn push rod. Just let that kick normally. Again, I'm only using Brodak CA on parts like this because I know this is fresh. When you're using CA that's a year old, good luck. Now once I get this just sanded slightly, I leave the dust on there. Now this is the trick that I think works every time. I seal that because it's sealing in the dust right up to the end of the joint, and we're past where the wire goes in by maybe 3/8 of an inch. But I'm leaving this CA on here. I can even go a little bit past here. And while the CA is wet, while it's wet like that, take an old piece of sandpaper, one that's you've already used because you're going to throw it away when you're done, and just lightly sand that out. Now what happens is the dust becomes part of the material that you're sanding. You do this 2 or 3 times and you'll have a perfect push rod end. And if you try to make it real pretty, the odds are good you're going to go through somewhere or make it too thin or something. I would just as soon have it, this part nobody's really going to see, but I really do want it bulletproof. Now once I can feel that, if I've got any bad spots on there, that looks fine. You can just give it another coat. Same thing, because what's happening, you can see the dust down there. The dust is filling in the gaps, and we're building up a bulletproof end on a push rod. That's going to be for sure lighter than if we used the bigger push rods. And we're coming up on the end of this session today because we have a bunch of other stuff to do, including our daily walk, which we don't ever stop. But I may get back tonight and be able to install this or get it final installed. We'll see how busy the day turns out. Now, where's that bell crank? Here wrong side. I purposely made these without the castellated nuts because I knew this was going to be a problem. Yeah, even at a couple when this is in neutral, which is where the interference is, the push rod is at maximum throw, so that'll be fine. All right, so we got hopefully one of them done. Now the last thing is, once this is done, is the push test. There's never a problem in the push rod action of pulling. It's the push. And I want to push on this. Well, no, there's no way that's going to be a problem. There's no way. I can't bend that at all. Well, this session, I think we're well into having that push rod installed. Next time we get to work on this, we'll try to get the push rod final fit. Maybe get that sheeting back there, and then we can start working on that inner tip. Starting to come to life. So here's what you have to look forward to when you retire. And when it's, what is it, 30 degrees out there? Warm soup. But Karen seems to think I only deserve peanut. Look at this. Peanut butter and jelly!
You didn't want soup. You asked for
I want to be in management. Management gets soup, and labor gets peanut butter. Who the hell came up with this formula? I want to see my union rep.
You asked for it.
Oh my God, I want to see my union rep about this. I built you a beautiful kitchen. Oh my God.
You asked for peanut butter and jelly, you got it.
Peanut butter and jelly. Oh, we're going to walk right after lunch. Is that the deal?
Yes.
Before it snows or something crazy happens out there.
No, we're going to have to dress warm.
Oh, dress warm is right. Peanut butter and jelly. Hard to believe. I worked 62 years in the labor force, ran my own business, invented 400 products.
Peanut butter and jelly any day you want. Now you're not getting it.
But,
That's it.
But how come I don't get hot soup?
Because you asked for peanut butter and jelly.
That's not true. Can you put the hand on a Bible here or on the Quran or something? Holy mackerel. Peanut butter. Now one of the things that's always an issue is to get this bend, which is in theory about 91 degrees if you measure it accurately. We want to get that as accurate as possible so that what happens when we actually solder it onto the bell crank, it's going to sit at exactly the right height. Now, to do that, I need to solder a little brass washer, just about like so. But if you've ever tried to solder one and just get it nice and straight and flat, it's really difficult. But there's a little trick that I've used, and Joe Adamusco does the same thing. Take a piece of scrap balsa, put the washer on, and now you can adjust your final height to what you think is going to be the ideal height for this job. It'll stay at 90 degrees. Everything will stay equal, and you should in theory be able to just solder that very accurately. Now the advantage of always using Stay Bright solder, it melts at a much lower temperature, and anytime we're soldering anywhere near the bell crank, we don't want to melt the bell crank, or we don't want to detemper it, I should say. And we always want to make sure, absolutely positively sure, in this case, we let this cool and take our baking soda and water. Once that cools, deflux the joint, and then I'll show my method of doing the bottom of the push rod. We've soldered it, but not right by the bell crank, and that's the whole idea of this. We don't want to. I wouldn't want to solder this washer while the bell crank was in place. Okay, so now what I want to do, I've got little notches cut in there, and what I want to do, I want to make sure I've got a nice fit. I'm using an eyelet. Now to get the eyelet in place, I'm going to take a little piece of copper safety wire in that notch, and then only solder right on the very end. I don't want to get any heat up on the bell crank. Now the copper wire, of course, sits in the notches, acts like a redundancy system. We have just exactly the right amount of play, and all I need to do is just touch that with the silver solder. I don't want to get the wire any hotter than it has to be. Now the last stop on this little production line here, I put a little bit of motorcycle chain lube on all the joints, everything that's got a bushing or a bearing. Of course, I'll clean this up real good before we go on to the next step. I want to double check that we have there's no binding anywhere on this. This is going to be a nice one. Okay, that's ready to install now in the wing. Now this is not really funny. We just ran into another little idiosyncrasy of a dihedral plane. When you make a bell crank assembly for a straight wing plane, it can go in either way. You just reverse it. And that way are the same. However, with this one, it's not the same, because the big rod and the small rod set the height of the bell crank, so they're not equal. So what happens is, if you put this side of the push rod, which I just did, I had to unsolder this and flip it. You go to put it in the plane, the push rod's on the wrong side, and there's no way you can make the correction, because this side of the push rod has to be on the short side of the wire. Boy, I hope I didn't do this twice. Anyway, so now we need to just test fit this in here. And of course, there's always a little bit of wood or something that has to get cut away. I just made a little trough so we could start to see how much of this is going to actually get cut away at some point in time. Again, we're not depending on that right now, or at some point in time we're probably just going to get rid of most of it. It's just there to hold the sheeting in shape. So every time you do something with a new, everything we do is prototyping. That's the issue. When you do a plane the second and third time around, or if somebody watches this DVD, they probably can figure out, whoops, bell crank only goes in one way. But when you're prototyping along here, especially after a long walk in the park where maybe your brain is fried, I'm not sure. Well, let's see how this is going to just test fit in here. Now for sure it's going to hit something. It's rubbing up on this rib, in fact. So we're going to have to move some of that. I can see right away that's got to go. In fact, the push rod rides right on that rib. That rib has to basically take a vacation. So what I'm going to have to do is cut a little more of this away and this piece of wood. And now maybe what we're going to have to do, I'm trying to think how I can do this. Let's see. From here back, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do this the way I want. No, I'm not going to be able to do it. What's going to have to happen, this whole piece is going to have to go for now, and then I'm going to have to just put this top piece in when I put the sheeting across here. That's just another thing of, it's always some little thing relative to putting dihedral in the plane. It's very complex when you induce dihedral into any design. See, once you actually build a design, now we would know how much of these ribs would really wind up, and I really still think the best thing would be to have these 3 middle ribs. Well, the middle one anyway. No, not really, because we're going to have to cut it away for the push rod anyway. Now my concern was that this hole would be way too big. It looks like it's going to be fine. It looks like, if anything, it's even going to be on the small side. But again, I want to be able to get this to ride up. Our horn height. So many little decisions, so many little calculations here, but for sure, this is the heart and soul of the plane, and this doesn't get compromised. I hear the phone. Now once this is set enough that I have enough clearance here, I'm trying, again, not to make this opening any bigger than it has to be, just so I have good push rod clearance. Before I put even one drop of glue on there, I want to make sure I have no interference on anything here. And plenty of clearance on that push rod, which should be no problem at all. And we're ready to tack glue it at the bottom, just enough so that we can do a little walk through, make sure there's no interference, and there isn't any. There's nothing left here to cut away, and this is going to give us a big advantage when we go to put, and I know Joe wants to put the gear blocks in, because we'll know exactly where the lead outs are, and if they interfere, we know we can move them or we have to move them. Now just one drop of CA there just to hold that in place while we go through the interference fit check. I don't want to have that glued in and then have to do any major modification. Once I know that's in, let that kick off. I'll put a couple of drops of CA here and then run CA around all of these spar mounts. Just get that all glued in. Now Joe has built this with ambroid, and the CA and ambroid don't interfere with each other, so just have a double redundancy system on having that spar. That spar is going to carry a lot of weight. And once we're happy with that, we'll be ready to install a top spar. Now this is a precision part that Joe made, and it's cut from motor mount. It's got the dihedral taper and the exact belt crank location. Now the only thing that we're going to have an issue with here is I want to put this on with epoxy, and I want to make sure it comes right to the edge. I don't want to have it sticking up, but I'll mix up some epoxy, get this piece on, and probably that's all we're going to be able to get done tonight. But getting that piece in, and then the next session we can just attach the sheeting. Although, yeah, we can attach the sheeting then, and I can see exactly where this push rod is going to wind up. Because then one of the next steps is going to be to make up this block for our horn, and that's going to be a very I haven't even figured out exactly how I want to do it yet, but that'll take some time. Now the other issue is I look through the wing. We got to make up the adjustable lead outs, but I look through the wing here. Wow, that's going to be real, but it's almost like an I-beamer. When you look at the wing without the flaps, you can see it's a real high aspect ratio wing. It's really a high-tech piece of equipment here. This is not just your average, Nobler, modified Nobler, or Cardinal, or PM, or whatever. Again, we're using Brodat. Alright, so after I get this mixed up real good, and this is one of the parts I'm going to babysit because I don't want any chance. This wing center section is going to take stress year after year after year after year, over and over and over. And in my estimation, it really pays to do it right. There's no excuse to try to save weight here. Is just crazy. This is one area. And I really appreciate how much time Joe must have taken to make these parts precision, because everything so far on this whole thing has been just about as easy and straightforward as you possibly could ever want. Again, I want to get a good epoxy footprint. I'm sure everybody knows what that's all about. And I actually can put some down in. Get that even. Okay. Clean paper towel. Now the reason I say I want to babysit this is such a critical joint. I wouldn't want to do this with the middle of a coffee break or something. I really want to make sure the glue gets down in there. And then what I'm going to do is from the inside, harden up this joint, just let thin CA wick its way in there and harden up that joint from the inside. Now we've got now what's going to happen, get my hands clean here, get a little alcohol on the rag. hands. And now we'll sit for a good, maybe 5 or 7 minutes. Just press that. Make sure it stays straight. Add just a little bit of heat here. Let it bond up better. And I'm pretty sure, and actually it's going to work to my favor, I'm pretty sure this is the last thing I'm going to get done tonight. Because we're working with a pretty tight time restriction here on tonight. Okay. So I'll just babysit this for usually 5 to 7 minutes. You can feel it kicking off. Now as that glue starts to go off, this is what's nice about having a padded table. You can put a little bit of pressure on. There it goes. You can actually feel it kicking off. You can feel the wood getting, that you can't move it. Now I just want to drop in thin C8 because I know this joint is going to be where I want the wood the hardest. Let it run all the way forward. Oh, that's nice. So we've got this sealed from the inside, from the outside. It'll be glassed more than likely. The bell crank is in there solid as a rock. Mission accomplished. Well, next time we get to work on this, we'll have our work cut out for us. This was really a pretty decent session. And most important, I think that bell crank and that wing center section, I think that's just going to be as good as it gets. Once we get the sheeting on that, then it's really going to start to look, we'll get the inboard tip. I already am making up a priority list of what the next. Now in the mail today, I got some cool stuff from Rich Wallbridge. Starting with a cool picture, I'll put this in the shop, of him and his dad with matching Stragers. Anyway, he also sent me a little home DVD of some of the action, the appearance judging. I know everybody likes to look at the new planes. The appearance judging from the Northwest Regionals that just took place. And the West Coast Flyers, we always like to see their new planes and their used planes, and just basically share some of the enjoyment we have from the event. Anyway, this footage comes from Rich Wallbridge. And we're going to be working with him more and more as time goes by here. It seems like he's really gotten the Spitfire bug. And that's a hard bug to get rid of. Anyway, and thanks for sharing this with us, Rich. And we're going to try to get you well supplied with Spitfire parts.
In downtown Vancouver, I don't think there's anything. But in Richmond, there's Phil's Hobbies. We fly Beginner's control line stuff. But if you want to buy
Nice guy.
good to see ya.
I brought my knitting again.
At a girl.
You'll be excited to see it. Now it's scarves. Well, which one's yours? She usually. Oh, that's yours. The Jack Thompson I did. I thought it was one of my favorites. That one and the one I just ordered.
My conversation was largely instigatory for the sugar school.
Oh, really?
Jack was grocery.
We can give him credit for that.
Blame him.
Blame him, all right. I like the wheel cover thing. It's so cool. I don't see anybody else.
Yes.
Now when I'm looking, I see a lot of nice.
I very much like
Yeah.
Right here. Oh, that's one you didn't plan. Which one? The red? Yeah.
Who's in charge here?
Anyway. Those are my first colors. I like that. But yours is very sharp. Very nice. Did you? Oh.
the missing had it would have been much prettier with that skin on it. So I think that would oh yeah, a lot. Well, with the eagle and all. Yeah, because Miss America just had a little thing with white stripes. The white stripes just separate. Then they had the 11, white 11 and red. Racing.
Here's Dave Royer.
Hi, I just met your wife. Can I meet his wife? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. And the front almost looks like a shark a little bit. It just makes me think shark like. They are eagles. Yeah, eagle, that would make sense. Oh! You talking about on the tail area? Oh, on the nose. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, now I get it. You see it now. Yeah, and there's the mouth. Blue. Oh, yeah, that's very cool.
And the wheel pants are the claws.
Oh, yeah, that would be. Yeah, I never tell me that.
The feathers, you know.
I mean, it's called the eagle. Or what's it called?
It's a mustache.
Oh. But it's supposed to have an eagle.
When I did all my Americans, they call it the American Eagle American.
Okay.
Because there's an American Eagle mustache. Sort of yeah, Howie Keith had one that had a very similar.
Is this a retrofit or
It's actually a little bigger than the other ones. Rose is shorter. And if you take the hardware engine off, it's less than that scale.
really?
It's something like 718 ounces.
Well, what has he got? Like 28 ounces of battery and motor in there, and the rest of it?
You're within a pound. Let's see, 66 ounces.
then the other controlling guys, other controlling events don't get to appreciate the camera time. You gonna fly into this?
No. After you.
I might come back later if the wind calms down. I got 9 miles an hour right now.
9.
Those are good 8s. He hit his intersection. Huh? He hit the intersection.
Emily likes watching this, doesn't
Is there a club in Fresno State that does this? No.
doesn't stab you planes at all anymore?
Now that last flight was Rich Waldridge flying at Whittier Narrows. And we're at the end of this tape, unfortunately. These days go by so quick. But we're looking forward to, boy, every day there's something exciting happening here in the shop. And we hope you're enjoying the DVDs. Please share them with everybody. We'll see you on the next tape.